Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, America, and the rest of the world, to our international listeners. This is On the Move with Mack Worley. I, of course, am your host, Mack Worley III. This is the show where we attempt to inspire you to stand up for your rights. I want to really shift focus this week from politics. We're going to delve a little bit. We have to talk a little bit about what happened during the debates. But this isn't going to be one of those shows where I play a clip of something they say, I talk about it. I play a clip of something they say, I talk about it, and just continue on and on and on. I don't want to do that. It's Sunday. You've probably already heard everybody else doing that throughout the week. So if you want to hear that, there's other shows out there. Go look for those shows. That's not what this show is today. I want to focus on things that we're not talking about. The things that I think that they're pretty important that we should be talking about. That's why this episode is called Don't Let the Election Distract You. This is episode 136 of our program. Our featured topics today. In the first hour, I'm going to be joined by James Baker of Detroit Open Carry. I want to talk gun rights and open carry with him. I think what he's doing in Detroit is immensely important. And my kudos go out to Detroit Open Carry, first of all. So in the second hour, we're going to talk about the economic collapse. Going to have some financial talk with Dan Sandini, my good friend and friend of the show. He's got a lot of great financial advice. This guy has been able to retire at a really young age because of his financial mind. So I want to pick his mind from the viewpoint of the coming collapse. So we're going to talk about that. Also, I want to talk about why you should be preparing for the coming collapse instead of focusing on this presidential election. We're going to focus on things like the Deutsche Bank crisis, how they're primed to crash, negative interest rates, and bank recapitalization, also known as bail-ins, which I've been warning you about, are coming. I want to talk about why the U.S. will invade Syria. I no longer think this is a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And we're going to focus on terror attacks, proxy wars, and potential risk of World War III. I want to talk about how we are now seeing Americans sue Saudi Arabia for their potential involvement in 9/11. And I want to talk about what led to this, how we got to this point, and some potential backlashes from Saudi Arabia if this is allowed to continue, which it appears like it's going to happen. Then I want to talk about how a UN panel has recently said that the U.S. owes black people reparations for a history of racial terrorism. Then if we have time, I want to go into my analysis between reasonable people and unreasonable people. And I want to have a real big emphasis here on the non-aggression principle. And also, if we have time, I want to get into defining Conservatarianism, the way I see it. I am a libertarian with conservative leanings. I'm calling myself a conservatarian because I don't know what else to call me. I don't fit within these cookie cutter categories. I agree with a lot of what the Libertarian Party stands for, with the exception of, really hurting ourselves in regards to cutting the military without first answering our issue on being energy independent, our issue with being energy dependent on places like Saudi Arabia, for example, foreign oil. If we're going to cut our military, we have to first resolve that issue. We have to first become energy independent, so we don't care what's going on overseas. We don't necessarily have to worry about what Russia is doing and how they're going to be projecting their force when we leave and create a power vacuum. So These are issues I disagree. Also, immigration. I'm not an open borders guy, but I digress. We'll save this conversation for that time in defining conservatarianism. We got a lot of show in store for today. If you guys would like to join in, if you have anything that you would like to add to the conversation, please give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. 360-450-5625. You can also get us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Message us. If your message is deemed worthy, I will read it on the air. And feel free to get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. I'll read it live on the air. We'll have a little back and forth here. I'd much rather have a dialogue than a monologue, but we'll see how things go. Anyway, without further ado, I would be remiss if I did not say, for you, please go to our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Check out our shop link over there. We got lots of originally designed T-shirts, coffee mugs, hoodies, phone cases, Liberty-oriented designs like the Bear Arms T-shirt. It's a picture of a bear with the word arms written over it. I thought it was pretty funny. It's designed by my wife for you guys, and actually for me as well, because I thought it would be cool, and I wanted it. These are things that I liked, and I figured, hey, if I want it, maybe you guys do too. We got a Be Libertarian shirt. We've got a hashtag Never Trump shirt. You know, look, if you don't agree with me, that's okay. We don't have to agree on Trump. It's all right. But as long as we're working towards, creating a smaller government with a less size and scope and impact on your life, then we're on the same side. This election doesn't matter, and we'll talk about why. But I digress. Please check us out at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. By the way, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you out there who would like to catch the show again. And by the way, I really do appreciate you letting us bend your ear. I know you've got a lot of choices out there in the interwebs. So I really appreciate you giving us some time to talk about things like guns, philosophy, the non-aggression principle, politics, all sorts of different stuff. We'll give you the analysis from a Conservatarian perspective through the lens of Conservatarian, and look at what we're seeing in the news from that perspective. So please follow us over at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us at YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. Okay, so before we cut to our first commercial break of the day, there's some things that I have to address based upon these debates. Now, many people here are going back and forth. I've heard ever since the end of this debate, Trump won, Clinton won, Trump won, Clinton won, and it seems like the mainstream media has continued to push the narrative, and I might add successfully, that Clinton has won, and it looks like polls are indicating that, but it's still early, and especially within the states, a lot of states haven't been polled yet, so it's hard to determine what the American people think. Now, I think, coming from a neutral perspective, because I don't like either one of these candidates, I absolutely loathe Hillary Clinton's policies. Complete and total Marxism. I am not for it. And I absolutely loathe many of Donald Trump's policies. Again, many of the same issues, still calling for a bigger government, calling for tariffs and, essentially more gun control in the form of no-fly list gun bans. But again, I don't want to dive too far into this. But so being a neutral perspective, I personally, I thought Donald Trump really came out swinging within the first 30 minutes, and then from there, it looked like he missed quite a few opportunities to really take it to Hillary Clinton. I think he got caught up on defending himself on things that I don't really think actually matter, and I don't think matter to the most of the American people. Things like, him calling a beauty pageant contest winner Miss Piggy. I'm not going to go into any of that. I don't care. I don't care what he did 20 years ago in regards to some insulting some woman. I don't care. And I don't think that the vast majority of Americans do either. So I'm not going to go into that. If you want that, there's other shows out there. Go search them out. Pretty sure all you got to do is turn on Fox News and hear some of that analysis, and CNN for the other side of the perspective. So anyway, for me, I thought that Donald Trump probably won the most crucial part of the debate, which is the first 30 minutes. A lot of people, I would imagine, myself included, in the initial watch, I ended up turning it off after 30 minutes. I found it incredibly boring, because I felt like I was hearing an argument from one statist to another, and they were just debating about how to grow the government's power. That's the way I felt. But I think that I tried to watch it from another perspective, from an average voter, somebody who's not that engaged, and I thought that Donald Trump really took it to Hillary Clinton in the first 30 minutes. From that point, I think that he allowed himself to become distracted, and instead of talking about Hillary Clinton, how corrupt she is, how she's been living off of a slush fund known as the Clinton Foundation while receiving foreign money into this, while serving in the State Department. These are things that he could have talked about, the email server scandal. But again, this didn't come up. Obamacare didn't come up, by the way, which even if it did, Hillary Clinton's talking about protecting it and expanding it. Donald Trump's talking about repeal and replacing it. And based on his previous interviews, this is not my opinion. This is word coming from Trump's mouth. Donald Trump's talking about how he would replace it with single payer. He said he doesn't care. He said the government's going to pay for it. He doesn't care if he loses Republican voters. He understands it's not a very conservative position. So unless he's changed that, and if you believe he's changed that, which I don't, that's the issue. So even if that does come up, what does it really matter? Again, we're just debating about how we want to change, how we want to increase federal power, how we want to impact your life more with federal government overreach. Instead of actually talking about how we can trim back this tree, cut some of these heads off of the Leviathan. That's why I thought it was boring. But in the last bit of it, in the last bit of the debate, I felt that Hillary Clinton managed to really take control of the narrative and goad Donald Trump into defending himself, which isn't beneficial. I don't think that helps him. I think he really benefits by going on the attack, on the offensive, and even if he's not the first to swing, he always calls himself a counterpuncher. And I do believe that there is some benefit in him being attacked and saying, well, okay, you want to talk about me, let's talk about you, and then switching it around and attacking Hillary Clinton for how corrupt she is. She's the most corrupt politician in U.S. history, and she's a pretty easy target. I don't think that he needed to spend as much time as he did defending himself. That's personally my take on it. I would love to hear what you guys thought. Get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow or Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can, like I said, call in 360-450-5625, 360-450-5625. Give us a call. Let us know what you thought. Now, before we cut to a commercial break, I want to just play a little clip here. Now, this is Obama talking about no-fly list, and this is something that we already knew, but it was reemphasized in the debates here. So let's go ahead and play Obama talking about the no-fly list.
That here in America, it's way too easy for dangerous people to get their hands on a gun. For example, right now, people on the no-fly list can walk into a store and buy a gun. That's insane. If you're too dangerous to board a plane, you're too dangerous by definition to buy a gun. And so I'm calling on Congress to close this loophole now. Okay,
so that's Obama's position on the no-fly list. If you're even suspected of being a terrorist, you're merely suspected. They add you to this list. Again, they don't need any evidence to suspect you. No evidence at all. So if you're merely suspected, you can be put on this no-fly list and denied a right, a fundamental human right to defend yourself without any evidence, without even knowing that you're on the list, and without facing facing the person accusing you of this crime or of this. And again, you don't even know that you're on the list until you try to buy a gun. And then, God help you if you try to get off the list. It took Ted Kennedy, a senator, several months and lots of money to get off of this list. This guy has clout. Imagine how it's going to be with you and me trying to get off the no-fly list. Well, we found out in the debate, if you haven't been paying attention, that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both agree on the use of the no-fly list to ban people from getting guns. Here it is.
First of all, I agree, and a lot of people, even within my own party, want to give certain rights to people on watch lists and no-fly lists. I agree with you. When a person is on a watch list or a no-fly list, and I have the endorsement of the NRA, which I'm very proud of. These are very, very good people, and they're protecting the Second Amendment. But I think we have to look very strongly at no-fly lists and watch lists. And when people are on there, even if they shouldn't be on there, we'll help them. We'll help them legally. We'll help them get off. But I tend to agree with that.
And Hillary Clinton is sitting there nodding her head the whole time. This is a point that they do agree on. Both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump agree that if you are merely suspected of being a terrorist, and watch as this list will grow as soon as they're able to deny you your rights, suddenly anybody and everybody will wind up on that list for no reason at all. But it's very concerning to me, and I do believe that the NRA. This is really disappointing to me. The NRA should be ardently coming out against this position, and yet this is part of the problem. This is exactly what I've been saying to you would happen underneath the Donald Trump presidency and underneath a Donald Trump candidacy. Honestly, it's Republicans not speaking out against things that they historically would have because they don't want to do damage to their guy. But anyway, we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by our special guest, James Baker of Detroit Open Carry. I'm really excited to talk to him about open carry, gun rights, all sorts of other things. You guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, Mac Pack. We're back. Thanks for sticking with us to the break. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and bring James Baker from Detroit Open Carry on the line. Hey, James, are you there?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, man. First of all, I just want to say thanks for joining us on the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been following what you guys are doing out there in Detroit and watching your Facebook Live events, man. And I think you guys are doing awesome stuff out there. So my hat's off to you, man.
Oh, I appreciate it, really do. We've been doing this all kinds of liberty activism in terms of gun rights and police audits for 3 years now, although some of us have been doing it for far longer. But in our organized sense right now, it's been about 3 years.
I see. So if people are maybe in the area or they want to support your cause or at least get more information on what you guys are doing in Detroit, do you guys have a Facebook page, a website, social media, other kind of stuff like that?
Sure, absolutely. We actually have, I'm very proud of this, the #1 open carry YouTube channel in terms of views. It's a well-kept secret. I don't really brag that very much. It's the YouTube channel is called libertyisforeveryone.com.
Awesome, man. Congratulations.
And that is libertyisforeveryone.com. And that is also one of our websites. You can find us on Facebook as Liberty is for Everyone as well. The Facebook group that you frequent is Detroit Open Carry. Yes, that's all kinds of members of the community that we know and some of us are in. But it's our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, Liberty is for Everyone, that has all the main content of us, standing up for our rights against police, meeting literally excited people in the streets, telling them about their rights. It's literally mind-blowing when especially when we go in a place like Detroit, where it's dominantly black, and these people already understand police suppression. They already understand what the state has done. They already understand, maybe not in a literal sense, but they understand how their dollars are being devalued. And we go through, hey, you have a right to protect yourself. You are a free, beautiful, independent human being. You have rights, and the government is taking those rights, and you should stand up for it. And it's amazing how a group walking down the street with rifles, how out of the ordinary is that, and yet we get so much amazing, completely authentic support.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I noticed the same thing. I don't know if you know, but you are among a friend here. I personally am an open carry advocate myself. I've seen your very famous video. Okay, let's call it infamous because I don't know if it's famous, but yeah, I completely agree with what you guys are out there doing. And by the way, for those of you out there, you don't have to live in Detroit to support what they're doing or to get in contact with them. Reach out to say, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. I would like to know how to do it here. Do you have any suggestions? I'm sure you guys would be happy to do that. Offer some kind of advice or things like that. But one of the things I'm curious about, because this is, and let me play devil's advocate here. I hear all the time these kind of arguments, so I would love to hear what you have to say about it.
Please.
For example, let me just ask before we get into the devil's advocate stuff. Where do you stand on giving your ID to a police officer if you have a firearm on you and a police officer walks up to you and says, "Hey, can I see your ID?" And would you just quick answer yes or no? Would you give that ID?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Me either. So let me ask you from a devil's advocate position here, from somebody who's not, they don't understand why you just won't cough up that ID. You could just give the ID and go home, and your day would be over, and you wouldn't have any problems. You wouldn't be hassled. Why not give the ID? Why not do that?
Well, you could just as easily give your wallet to a mugger, and you might survive. It doesn't mean you're any better off for not having your wallet.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and also, from my perspective, and this is what I say to people. I shouldn't have to give up my protection against unlawful search and seizure in order to assert my right of self-defense, my right to carry a gun. Simply because I assert one right does not mean I have to relinquish any others. In fact, I have a constitutional protection that says I don't have to do these things. So that's why I'm not going to go. Again, when I open carry, I'm not just out there advocating for the Second Amendment. I'm out there advocating for all of my rights. So why on earth would I relinquish my Fourth Amendment protections simply because I asserted my Second?
Exactly. It makes perfect sense to me. Hey, hit me with another one. I like this.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Don't people have a right to not be afraid?
People don't have a right to feel anything. That includes safe. That includes happy. You only have a right to non-aggression. And it really is quite as simple as that. You have a right to self-ownership. You own yourself. You control yourself. That means that anyone claiming any partial ownership over you through control or through taking a certain amount of your labor every day in tax dollars, that is an act of ownership over you. You own yourself. It's really that simple.
Completely agree. And I mean, some people have said to me, that I'm actually the aggressor because I'm making them feel unsafe. I'm actually being aggressive towards them simply because I have a gun in my possession. Not that I'm touching it. Not that, and again, this isn't happening from people out on the street. This is happening from internet trolls on YouTube.
Of course.
Yeah, nobody out in the streets has any issue to my face about it. You know, there obviously are people calling the police, but you know they're doing so out of straight up ignorance. They don't understand that, first of all, open carry in Washington State, where I used to live, was completely legal. And secondly, if I'm not touching the weapon and I'm not gesturing with it, I'm not threatening anyone verbally with it, then I'm not being an aggressor to you. In fact, by you calling the government to come and harass me for simply doing something that I not only am I entitled to do, but it's constitutionally protected. You're in fact actually being the aggressor because you're trying to send armed goons with guns to stop me from doing something that I have every right to do.
Correct. The initial premise that, oh, well, you're making these people uncomfortable, well, that implies that there's a necessary correlation there. And that would imply that objectively, if you were making people uncomfortable, you would likely make everyone uncomfortable. But the fact that some people are uncomfortable and some people aren't proves that it is not objective, it is subjective, and therefore you are not actually causing anything. They are the correlation there, not you.
Absolutely. And, you don't have a right to feel safe. That doesn't exist. There's no constitutional right anywhere in there. I challenge you, listeners out there, and let's naysayers. If you don't agree with open carry, you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to be as wrong as you want to be. But there's no constitutional right that says you have a right to feel safe. Nowhere in there.
Okay, well then, Mac, I gotta ask you. Then why would you need a military?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, in regards to what? I mean, obviously, there's.
Well, if you don't have a right to feel safe, why would you, as a member of a collective tax farm, have any kind of right to a collective military?
Oh, look! I mean, we can go into this conversation. This is a rabbit hole and by the way, let me just clarify. From what I understand, you're more of a voluntarist, right? You believe in voluntary society, and from what I understand, and I'm hearing based on things that we're talking about, you sound a lot similar in ideology to, let's say, like an Adam Kokesh. Am I right?
Hey, okay, I can work with that. We can start there. Okay.
Okay, so. For me, I have disagreements with my libertarian and anarchist friends, and who are way down the path towards anarchism. And look, I respect their opinions. Some of these things I happen to just disagree. And I would love to see a completely voluntary society. And in fact, I advocate for it in terms of, I think taxes should be voluntary. And I think that if they were, not only would people pay for things that they support and that they want, like military, but we would also it would be another check and balance, a further check and balance with the people to stop an out of control government. Would you agree?
Exactly. See, Mac, you're actually an anarchist. You're really a voluntarist, because if you believe that those things are the way they should be, then that's all there is to it. It's not a matter necessarily of what you do now. It's about, if you believe that's the way it should be, if you believe that should be the goal of society, then we'll all gradually get there eventually. The problem is, if people don't realize that a voluntary society should be a goal, if they think that a coercive authoritarian society should be a goal, well, then obviously there's a path that needs to be changed there. Mm-hmm. But let me take this one step further, if I might be so bold.
Go ahead, man.
So you might make the argument that you have a natural right to carry a gun, right?
Yes.
It's not necessarily a constitutional right. It is enumerated in the Constitution, but it is a natural right you already have. But while that works in a place like Michigan or Washington, if you cross an imaginary line into Illinois, all of a sudden, does that right disappear? Or is it that the local government does not respect that right?
That would be the local government does not respect that right.
Correct, exactly. So would you also make an argument, well, could you make an argument that you have a right to buy property where you want? You have a right to make a voluntary arrangement with someone, and I'm going to exchange this for this property, and I'm going to build a house here. Does that make sense? I
completely agree with that. As long as there's mutual consent.
So then you could also make the argument that if that is a natural right to be able to go in some kind of voluntary agreement like that, why can't you purchase land from someone in Cuba and move there without any government hassle? Well, it's because the government doesn't respect that right. The point is that borders themselves are imaginary lines, and that human rights cannot be contained by those borders. I just used two examples, homesteading and the right to firearms. Those rights always exist, and so therefore government borders are not only immoral, but they're a paradox, because clearly your human rights are completely separate from them.
Look, man, I'm not going to disagree with you in regards to philosophy, because I absolutely do agree. My contention here is that there are bad actors in the world. And first of all, let me, before I get to that, let me just point out that the way that we get to the philosophy, or the way that we get to this utopian voluntary society, we really just differ on how to get there. I think that we do it essentially the way that the progressives did, just in reverse order. They systematically started increasing government power, centralizing more power with the federal government. I say we chip it down just the same way that they brought it up. So the difference is really on how we get to this. I would love to be at that point. My difference of opinion here on borders is the rest of the world is not like us in regards to this philosophy. Now, if suddenly overnight a magic wand is waved and everybody decides that they want to be voluntarist, that's absolutely cool. Then I'd be cool with an open border society. That's fine. But the problem is the rest of the world is run by tyrants and despots, and I'm not comfortable not having our own little portion of the world carved out that we say, this is us, that's you. If you want to live under tyranny, stay on that side. If you want to come be free, you want to be an American, come join us and actually join our society, assimilate to our culture. These are the things that I think that we should be doing.
Okay, but hold on. There's a huge logical paradox that you made that we have to go back to.
Okay, enlighten me.
You made the argument that if a magic wand was waved overnight and everything was voluntary, then sure, you would agree to this and everything would be honky-dory. I understand that. The problem with that is it's essentially waiting around for something to happen, and you're only going to participate in it when it happens. And if everyone is waiting around under that exact premise, waiting for a magic wand, it will never happen by definition.
Do you control the actions of Cuba, or Cubans, Russians? Do you control the actions of Saudi Arabia? Do you control these people?
You're describing these national boundaries as if they matter. I don't control Saudi Arabia or Cuba any more than I control you or my neighbor. Geography doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Well, the point is that until other countries decide that they're not going to live under tyranny, we have to protect what we have here.
Define countries. Define countries, though. Do you mean the people in those countries? Because I think around the world, most people don't really want to be slaves. I mean, I'll have to take a poll, but most people want to be free. The problem is they don't necessarily understand what that freedom is, thanks to the darkness that their governments keep them in.
Look, and I'm not going to disagree. Again, voluntarism, I believe, is the way to go. But I don't have control over the hearts and minds of people, nor do I want to have control over the hearts and minds of people.
Well, yes, no, Mac, you do. You have this radio show. Yes, you have all the control that you could possibly imagine over the hearts and minds of people. And I do with the YouTube channel. We all do our part. If we're spreading this message of why can't we eventually get to a voluntary society, if that's our real message, if that's what we really believe, that's what we need to be promoting. All we
can do is lead the horse to water. We cannot make it drink. This is the issue. Until other people around the world do not want to live under the kind of despotism that they do, we cannot help them. They are responsible for their own situation. Until they find their way out of it, we can't help them.
Okay, would you make the same argument for Illinois? Would you make the same argument for Cook County? You're just describing arbitrary borders. You're saying that this place around the world, but there are people in Cook County that don't get it. What about them? It's not like the U.S. is magically, immune from this.
This is my exact point. This is why we disagree about how to go about changing the government to a voluntary society. Because I personally, I believe that we are getting further and further away from this. We're increasing the federal Leviathan's power instead of decreasing it. We're losing the education war. And again, if you pull the rug out from underneath this government, as far as I'm concerned, I don't foresee it being replaced by a utopian voluntary society. I see it being replaced by another government, potentially worse. This is why I don't advocate for revolutions. This is why I advocate for changing this system.
I agree.
From within.
I agree with that. You would never pull the rug out, because unless people understand that voluntarism is the goal, that true freedom and personal responsibility is the goal, you'll just get another statist authoritarian government on top of it. This is common sense. Again, this is why we need to have a unified message of, we want to have a society where no one is forced to do anything that is against their rights.
And we don't disagree on that. See, that you and I, we're on the same team, and that's one of the things that I like about having friends who are way further down. I mean, again, maybe one day I will be where you are, and that I believe that we should be an open border society. And again, I think ultimately, if the rest of the world had the same philosophy, had the same ideas of limited governments and self-ownership, then yeah, I would absolutely, as I said, be for open borders. But they're not, and historically speaking, they haven't ever been. So I don't... Go ahead.
You have to be for open borders for there to be a net mass of people wanting open borders. If you abstain from wanting open borders, that you're just like everyone else that is abstaining from wanting open borders, and by extension, a voluntary society.
If you advocate for open borders, you get open borders. Just look at Germany and the dangers that are associated with that.
Those are not open borders. Those are not open borders for a wide variety of reasons. When I say open borders, I mean no borders.
One second, James. I'm just curious, because I've had conversations with a few different libertarians, and we have disagreements on what open borders are. So if you can enlighten me on what you believe open borders actually are, that would be awesome for me, because I'd like to understand it from the view of somebody who is a voluntarist, who is down this path, and please explain to me.
Okay, let's define border. When I say border, we're talking about a state border, a border that is defined by government. This includes literal states here in the U.S. This means countries. This means counties. These are arbitrary drawn lines by government, right? When I say open borders, I mean that there is no enforcement of the border whatsoever in any sense. The border is only a convenience to determine that this place is called this and that place is called that. That, if you cross this border, your rights change? No, none of that. You can't cross this border with this plant? No, none of that. You can't cross this border because you're from there? None of that. We all have a right to live where we want on this planet. Just because I was born here in the U.S. means that I'm stuck here, or that I'm stuck here unless I pay some exorbitant tax to my government. We're all free people that have always existed on this planet. And long before a government came along and created this tax racket where it defines what it can tax by some line in the dirt. Does that make sense?
Look, and yes, I understand your point, and this is exactly what I've thought was the argument for open borders, but I've been told otherwise recently. So I'm just making sure I'm not setting up straw arguments here, because it's not my intention. I want to approach this logically and intellectually and actually understand where you're coming from. So,
okay, then might I just one last shot, if I might back up. So this is me coming from an anarchist voluntarist standpoint. Years ago, I attended a libertarian convention when I was, very much in the ideology you described, Conservatarianism. Didn't really know exactly how to describe myself either. That wasn't the word I used, but long story short, there was this speaker that gave this awesome argument to these libertarians in terms of open borders and why it's a good thing. And the one thing that got me, that never turned me back to closed borders, was between the horror of someone you don't like crossing a border and a government using all of its force and might to stop people from crossing those borders, the government stopping people from crossing the borders is always the greater aggression. And I think that's true.
So my issue is the changing of your country, being that we do have a country, and I don't want to steal from Donald Trump and be like, it means we got a country. Look, we do have the exceptional nation that we have right now, not because of the people, not because of who Americans are or how hard we work or any of that. It's because of our philosophy. It's because of the system that we have created that allows us to have more freedom than any other nation in the world. The issue that I have with people coming here without assimilating, without understanding this culture, without understanding that philosophy, is that you allow them in and they end up imposing the same exact kind of systems and control mechanisms that they fled from. And this is my issue. I don't want to bring people here that don't want to be American. Because we have something. We have the greatest achievement in human history here, freedom.
And we're so special. We've been bred a certain way, and it sounds like American supremacy.
No, again, I actually just made the counter argument to that. We're not any better than anyone else. We have a philosophy that allows us to be free, freer than any other nation.
When you say we, do you mean you and I, Mac, or are you including Cook County?
Look, I'm referring to the American Constitution.
Well, but that's just the point. You're grouping us all together as if all of us Americans are somehow unified by we're this. No, you're generalizing. We're all individuals. There are anarchists, libertarians that I know that are all over Europe. The point is, I know what you're trying to say, but really, it's all nationalistic brainwashing that our government's been feeding us since childhood.
Okay, look, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree that nationalism. And by the way, hold on, we have another call here. Let's see what a caller has to say. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm Sean, and I'm calling from Ohio.
Oh, what's on your mind?
Hey,
what's on your mind, Sean?
Not much. I've been listening to your podcast. Is it live right now, or is there a delay?
Yeah, you're on.
This Mac?
Yeah, this is Mac. You're on the air, man. What's going on?
Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, I just want to call you guys and say both of y'all keep up the great work. But I also wanted to say, Mac, fear not. In a few years, you're going to follow the logic and all these arguments, and it's going to lead you to the exact place that it's led James and myself.
All right. Well, you know what? Don't give up on me, man.
I'm not giving up on you. I think you're in a great spot. But if you logically follow, some of the arguments that have been thrown forth. I mean, a little while back in the show, you said, I have the right to not to feel comfortable about other countries not coming to attack me, something to that effect. But it just reminds me of the same person calling the police saying, I have the right to not feel like this person with the gun is going to come attack me. So some of the same arguments that you're using for, your case, you're also using against your case. So in a way, I feel like you're kind of logically chasing your tail, but eventually, if you follow the logic, you will end up in a more voluntary, anarchist kind of a mindset.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate your call, Sean.
Because I started off a lot like you, but then you kind of slowly progress. Like, wait a minute, you just start connecting the dots, and it leads you, to a more free place, I believe. So, anyhow, thanks for everything you guys are doing, and keep up the good work. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for your call, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks for calling, Sean.
So look, first of all, I just want to clarify. I never said you have a right to feel free from being attacked from another country. I never said that. I just want to clarify. We as a society, okay, and when I refer to a we, and especially the freedoms and what you call nationalism, I'm referring to the set of documents that have established this form of government, this system. It's essentially in any country, and you're right, nationalism is present, and what I'm calling for is a hint of nationalism. I don't want us to be full-fledged nationalists where we think that we are supreme, or that we have we are better than anyone genetically or as people, but the philosophy, I will be so bold as to say, is better than anyone else's that's ever been put into practice. And I don't think that can be argued, because capitalism has risen more people out of poverty than any other system, period. So in regards to having a military, again, I think that it should be voluntary. I think that if I received a letter in the mail saying, hey, we would like you to pay taxes, we recommend that you pay this much percentage of your income, and here's the things that you can donate your tax revenue to, I would go through and I would pick places to donate, especially for services that I know I want, like, for example, the military. The idea right now that I just want to put out there is that look, I don't disagree with you about the utopian society. I want it. I want it just as bad as you. I don't want us to have to worry about enemies out there in the world, but unfortunately there are enemies out there in the world who will see us as if they see us being vulnerable, they will jump. There are places out there that leaders who are despots, hold on, that leaders who are despots like Putin, like let's see, all we have to do is look at ISIS right now, especially sending over their guys to attack us, and even what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring people to pick up the mantle of jihadism here. The idea of a nation is we put our backs together and protect each other. I don't see anything wrong with that, as long as we're not out there trying to become imperial and take over other territory, claim that we are superior in some way, therefore we're entitled to whatever we take from anyone else. I want us to continue to protect our liberty, our way of life, and each other. And I think that you best do that from a government. That's why I believe that we need some government. I want very, very limited government and prefer local and state governments as opposed to a federal one. But I think there is some role, limited role, in a federal government, in that I think that they should be helping to resolve interstate disputes, using immigration policy as per our Constitution has given that power, and providing for the common defense. And honestly, that is limited, in my opinion, to the Navy and to maybe an Air Force as well. But the bulk of your ground forces should not be from a standing army. It should be from state militias controlled by state governments. That's my opinion, and again, funded by the people voluntarily. This is my opinion, and this is where you and I disagree. But it's okay if we disagree.
No. What the actual issue is, we agree about 99%, and the 1% is semantics. Your wording is a little off from what I'd like to hear it as. You say government. I mean, what's a government? A government is a monopoly on the initiation of force. It's an institution that derives its existence off of coerced payments. Is taxation theft, Mac?
Forced taxation, yeah.
Okay, so exactly how much theft would you like to have in a society, Mac? Please tell me. How little theft would you like to have? Or would it be better to have no theft? You say little government, teeny tiny little governments. I know what you're trying to say, but government isn't the right word. Because a government is something that is forced and coerced. If you really want something at a local level that is voluntary, you can't use the word government.
We are having a semantic disagreement there. But I understand where you're coming from. And again, I'm not calling for forced taxes. That never came out of my mouth. I've specifically said voluntary.
I know. That's just to clarify the idea that a government is the institution that exists off of that. So if you wanted a local government, you use that word government, that implies local forced taxation.
So
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a government.
Is a government not a government if it's restrained from collecting taxes forcibly?
Not necessarily. The hallmark of a government, which you can derive all of its other traits from, is that it is a monopoly of the initiation of force or coercion.
So what do you call a government that's restrained from collecting taxes forcibly?
A government. It's not a. Here's the problem. every government, by definition of the word government, you're describing a paradox. If it didn't take taxes forcibly, it could not be a government.
Why not? Why can't you have a government that collects taxes through voluntary donations? And how would that not still be a government? If it accomplishes the same goals, does the same jobs, it just doesn't force people to do it against their will.
If we really want to get into it, again, because government, by definition, is the monopoly of force. And if we take the word government, what does it mean? Govern, literally from the Latin root, means control. That's easy, right? But what is meant? The suffix meant. It means of the mind. Think mental, mentality. Literally, the word govern means control of the mind. And that's exactly what a monopoly of force and coercion is. We can make you do whatever we want because we have this monopoly of the initiation of force. If it couldn't withdraw taxes by force, it wouldn't be a government. If it was all voluntary, if it had to be funded and created voluntarily by nature of its funding, then it could not be a government.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna agree with you that it is a semantical difference, and we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on that because I think if it accomplishes the same things, it's doing the same job, it's just not using force in the process to collect the tax revenue in order to fund itself, then I think it's still a government. I don't know what to call it if that doesn't fit, but we'll just agree to disagree.
You call it a free market. You call it a free market. That's literally all it is. I understand the option if it's not a government, it's a free market because. If a hallmark of a government, monopoly on police service, right? Hallmark of a free market. You have competition of cell phones, right? If there was only one cell phone, then it would be a monopoly. It would be part of government. It would be coercive.
So
does this make sense?
No, I mean I understand where you're coming from. Let's pivot here, man. I want to bring us for the last few minutes here of this interview. I want to talk about gun rights with you some more. Are you cool with that, man?
I hear you.
Can we do that?
That's fine.
Okay,
that's fine.
So, I'm just curious in this debate that we're having now on the no-fly list. I would love for you, as a voluntarist, to actually explain your position on putting people on a no-fly list, a government watch list, and then denying them their right to bear arms based upon just merely being suspected of being a terrorist.
Well, okay, so first of all, I'm probably on the no-fly list for all I know. I mean, I was investigated by the FBI for domestic terrorism 2 years ago. So there's that, and then this whole idea of people on the no-fly list not being able to have guns, well, I mean, I don't really understand that because, see, I might be on it, but I still have all my guns right here. And you see, if I was on the list and I didn't have a gun and I wanted to buy it, I would find a way to go around it because laws are easy to go around. If you're brave enough to be free, then laws don't matter.
Exactly. I mean, I think even the vast majority of gun control advocates that I talk to and who advocate for these kind of things, they even admit themselves that criminals are going to find a way to get a gun. And if somebody's hell-bent on taking another person's life with a gun or otherwise, they're going to find a way to do it. So I personally, I don't see how this is beneficial. And as you said, it doesn't, putting them on the list and denying them the right to buy a gun doesn't prevent them from getting a gun through another means or using the gun that they may already have. I mean, it's just not an effective way to deal with it. In addition to the quagmire that you put this person in who possibly didn't even do anything wrong, and you didn't even have enough evidence to suggest that they did. You didn't have enough evidence to even get a warrant. It's just a mere accusation, and that I think is the most disturbing part about the no-fly list. So your take on the NRA? Are you a fan of the NRA, or do you have some beef with them like I do?
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about how many people the NRA has killed.
Please tell me, because I don't know anything about this. This is enlightening.
Oh, really? Oh, well, you see, maybe that's a little strong, but you'll follow this. The NRA has this interesting little game that they play with state governments about training people for their concealed pistol licenses, concealed handgun license, whatever the terminology is for the state. There's this pattern. I know it exists in Michigan and many other states that NRA certified instructors give a NRA certified, pistol safety course or some crap like that, so you can get your pistol license. And what does it teach you? It teaches you a little bit about the laws, and possibly, if you're lucky, maybe you get range time at which you stand there in an isosceles stance and you dump, one magazine into a non-moving target. That crap gets people killed because a gunfight is a fight. That means you're going to be on the ground, you're going to be wrestling, you're going to be moving, you're going to be hopefully ducking behind cover and getting off the X. The inferior, here, you just take this class because we're the NRA and we got a government permission to, charge you whatever the heck we want for this ridiculous class that's not worth anything, that doesn't teach you anything, just so you can get your permit. And does that make sense?
No, I mean, yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from on that. For me, I have issues with the NRA simply because they do actually advocate for some gun laws, like, for example, background checks, which I absolutely am 100% against every single gun law there is. I don't believe that gun laws make us safer, nor do I think that they're intended to make us safer. I think that what they are meant to do is to chill the Second Amendment, to actually make it more difficult, to throw more red tape between you and something that's a right, something that the government doesn't have the authority to infringe upon, but yet they are in violation of that right, by the way. But it's to me it is unbelievable that even the people who are advocating for these new laws, these new infringements, they admit that anything that they're proposing right now will do nothing to stop crimes of the past, like the mass shootings that we hear about every now and then, and the media blows up to be like it's happening every single day here in America. So it's really annoying for me that the NRA is still they are willing to compromise. And what happens when you compromise with these people that are trying to throw up more red tape around your rights is you're going to compromise your entire rights away, because the only thing that they have, their argument is that they've compromised because you still have the right, some rights right now. But eventually, they're going to come get them all. This is not like a conspiracy theory. They are saying that they want to come get all your guns. They want to impose the same laws that happen in the United Kingdom and what happened in Australia, where they did confiscation. Essentially, they mandatory buyback programs. That's confiscation. So it's upsetting to me about the NRA, and I'm curious if there are any gun right organizations that you actually support. Who do you throw your support behind?
I throw my support behind activists who actually get themselves on the street, like Mack Worley.
Well, thank you.
But to back up a second, we talk about the gun laws and the NRA. Well, first of all, the NRA is controlled opposition. They're not really designed to do anything for rights as much as suck money away and give us this idea that everything's going to be okay. I mean, if you go under this assumption that there's probably nothing you can do to stop Congress from banning something, if you're under the assumption that I'm one of 300 million people, I probably can't stop my senator from doing this, well, you have to come to the realization then that you have to decide that the gun laws don't apply to you. And it's really that simple. People say, there's going to be laws about confiscation, or they're going to ban open carry. Well, only as much as you comply with them. And that's kind of the magic about gun laws. It's kind of hard for them to make you comply with gun laws.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that in Washington, by the way, when they passed a very draconian gun law up there. I believe it was I think it was I-594, maybe it's I-591. I'm getting confused. Where they made it a felony to transfer possession, not ownership, mind you, possession of a firearm. They made it a felony, and if you pass it back to the owner, it's another felony. It's a dual felony. You have to have a background check for every transfer of possession. They essentially,
I remember this.
They essentially negated it up there. And I've got several videos of us doing that on YouTube. But we're running out of time for this segment, man. I really appreciate you joining me. And by the way, one more time for my audience out there, anybody who wants to get involved in what you're doing out there in Detroit Open Carry, website, social media, all that good stuff. Can you blast that out?
Sure. Liberty is for everyone. That's where you can find us on Facebook. Liberty is for everyone. On YouTube, libertyisforeveryone.com. as well as that website, libertyisforeveryone.com, and also freedomisforeveryone.com, because all those things are true. Human rights have no borders, sir.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, James. I really appreciate it. And everybody, that's James Baker of Detroit Open Carry. Go check his stuff out. Support what he's doing. He's doing some really amazing things. Thanks so much for joining us, James.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, we're back. We're into the second hour now. I sure do appreciate you all sticking with us. By the way, Sarah on Facebook says, "Hi, Mac. You and your guest have been discussing the possibility of a voluntarily funded government, and your guest maintains that if it is voluntarily funded, then it is not, in fact, a quote-unquote government. I would love to know what he would name an entity which provides the services discussed, Common Defense, for example, which uses various forms of fundraising as opposed to the extortion we call taxes. Does he have a more accurate moniker for such an organization?" You know, I asked him that, and by the way, James, if you're still out there listening, send me a message on Facebook and let us know. I don't, from what I understand, he didn't think that it should be called government, but it would just be called free market. Again, I disagree. I think it is still called government just because it's doing it without coercive force. I think it can still be a government. But, you know, it's a semantical disagreement. No big deal. We're allowed to disagree with each other here, and that's the beauty of freedom. We don't always have to see eye to eye. Anyway, at this point, I'm going to be joined by my very good friend, Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. Hey, Dan, are you there?
I'm here, Mac. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Honestly, I'm having a ball today. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you, because what I want to talk about is what we have already previously discussed here, the impending economic collapse. We're going to have some financial talk with you, Dan, and I want to get your perspective. And if you don't mind, can you give our audience just a little bit of insight into why your opinion might have some credibility here regarding to what you've accomplished in your life here through financial markets?
Well, around the year 2000, I was becoming disenchanted with the workplace environment, and I had worked my whole career, and I started learning about online, a group of people who had retired early in life, and I set it as a goal to be able to retire as soon as possible, because I figured that I just had not found that niche in life. And anyway, there's no magic to it at all. I mean, for your listeners who are investors and learn about investing, you just basically have to build a big enough pile of assets, and then there's something called the safe withdrawal rate, which shows you that, over time, if you look at the history of the stock markets and the bond markets in the United States from the 1800s forward, you can withdraw money from a portfolio at approximately 4% a year. So if you build a pile, if Mack Worley could build a pile of $1 million, you would have a substantially, a very, very, very good chance, almost 100% chance of pulling out 4% a year, adjusting that annually upward for inflation, and never running out of money. So you can remember that 4% rule. So on $1 million, you get $40K. $2 million, you can live off $80K, a little lot better than $40K. But anyways, I set my mind to do that. I did that in 2006, and I realized, the other day that I've been retired 10 years now, and keeping track of my own portfolio for 10 years. It's not a magic portfolio by any means. I use low-cost index investment funds from Vanguard. So anyway, and I have a master's in, I have an MBA and study finance at Northeastern University, and so amongst other things, I'm into politics and not podcasting, but in YouTubing and appearing as radio guests. But I'm still very interested in finance, and you and I had started talking about the gloom and doom that we expect in the American economy forthcoming, and what's coming. Is there going to be a financial collapse here, like we're seeing in Argentina, and how do people prepare for that kind of thing? So I know we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And the Deutsche Bank, you had brought up Deutsche Bank as that's obviously on the front of anybody's radars that's looking at a financial page right now. I mean, it's the biggest commercial bank in Germany right now, which is having trouble. The share price is really in the tank.
So, but before we get to Deutsche Bank, I'm just curious here, as far as what you foresee happening. Are you a doom and gloom predictor, kind of like myself here? Are you thinking that we're headed down to the same road that led us to the Great Recession, which I argue that we're still in, and we're heading towards a much larger and worse collapse than we had previously seen, because the Fed, I argue, is out of tricks. That there will be no bailouts. We'll be looking at bail-ins, and what I argue will be the ultimate collapse of the U.S. dollar. Do you agree with this, or do you see like a slightly different flip side to this?
I'm never one to try and predict when that's going to occur, and it certainly may occur, and I don't think anything is forever. So the United States economy is not forever. But, boy, I'm old enough now, I'm 54 years old, to remember back in 1987 where we had the largest decline in the stock market in the history of the United States. It was even a worse day-to-day decline over the 1920s and the Great Depression. And, boy, those gloom and doom predictions, it couldn't get any worse than that. We had, Mac, when I started working at MITRE, we had 17% mortgages. Try and get your mind around that. People were fighting to try and get them. And inflation was running at 12%. That was in 1980, okay, maybe 84 when I started working out of college. And so we went through a very tough period of hyperinflation, and then the result of tightening that under Reagan. And then we went through the very beginning of Reagan was a very tough time for America. But in the end, things ironed out. The economy didn't fail. The Fed pulled us back from the brink, if you believe their story. And yeah, history is. So I understand what you see, and that's, you believe that, we're seeing historically low interest rates. The Fed cannot flood the market with any more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's free money, right? Basically, out there right now.
Yeah.
And if we run into trouble, there's not much room for the Fed to go either way. They can't.
They're actually paying right now to loan money. So like people are actually getting paid to borrow money. I mean, this is unsustainable. First of all, I believe that the Fed has no more options. They continue to try to threaten that they're going to raise interest rates in order to make to basically get the same effects that they would get from raising interest rates, the economic boost by saying, there's potential that we're going to raise interest rates. There's absolutely no chance. I think that they're going to raise. They can't. They just cannot raise the interest rates. In fact, I'm predicting that we're going to see negative interest rates here in America if it doesn't all come collapsing before that actually happens. And I also argue that the banks right now are in the process of cooking the books to where, not cooking the books, changing their policies to where they can get a bail-in, where they basically steal depositor monies, what they call it a bank recapitalization, I believe is the word they use for it. Let me double check that. Yes, bank recapitalization. It's a bail-in where basically all of the depositors, people who put the money into it, if this bank collapses, they're not going to be getting a bailout from the federal government, and they know this. They know this is not going to happen, so they're going to just steal all of the money that you have, and it's going to be completely legal because they've changed their terms of service to allow this. So, those things that we agree on.
They can only get away with that so much, Mac. I mean, it sounds like to actually, for governments and for, citizens who are paying taxes, sounds like a great solution because, you let the bank fail. The creditors, who own bonds from the bank decide they're going to take 80 cents on the dollar and walk away with, something in their hand rather than nothing in their hand if the thing goes south. But the problem with that is that people begin to sell stock and bonds in the bank. And once that happens, the share price declines, and everything is linked together now. That's the problem. It's that if you have a sharp decline in the asset the net asset value of a bank like Deutsche Bank, that affects the entire market because all these organizations, private companies, they all own Deutsche Bank stock. I'm sure I own. If I look at my international funds, I'm sure I own quite a bit of Deutsche Bank stock, and I would expect those funds to be hurting right now. So as an investor, I don't like to see banks renegotiate their debts. But yeah, that's what you're talking about is these bail-ins and countries are doing bail-ins too. I mean, Greece, people loan Greece money and they're happy to get anything back on their money now. Never mind 80 cents, they'll be happy to get 50 cents on a dollar back coming out of Greece now, just because it's in such terrible shape. But I don't know, Mac, that is going to happen tomorrow. You look at the case of Japan. Japan has gone along for decades with just this. The United States is starting to look scarily like that, actually, which is like zero growth and no inflation and slight deflation. It's just this malaise where the economy just kind of goes along at its same pace. Nobody makes a lot of money, nobody does a lot better, nobody does a lot worse, and things just kind of go forward for decades. That's been going on in Japan. So before things go to hell in a handbasket, things can trudge along at sort of a benign pace for a long time, and then the boat can come roaring back for a while, and you've missed an opportunity to make money there. So one of the things I wanted to get across to your listeners is do not give up on the stock market and do not give up on the bond market. Historically, if you look back to the 1800s. And I suggest your listeners go and look at Jeremy Siegel, is the top economist at the Wharton School. He's a great guy. He appears on a lot of talk shows. He wrote a book called Stocks for the Long Run. It's a Bible for stock investors. And there's charts in there. I'll put one up on your listeners page, on your podcast page, which just show that by far, Mac, it's not even close that you have done so much better in the stock market than you have with any other investment. Bonds, yes, okay. And then next comes precious metals, okay. But the worst thing you can do is leave your money in cash. That's the worst thing you can do. So, I know you were talking about leaving your money in cash, and we may talk about that as an emergency. You definitely should have an emergency fund. But for your money for the long term, Mac, in your life, you're a young person. How old are you right now?
31.
You are 35 years away from a real retirement age. There are, if you look backward in the stock market in terms of losing, including inflation, losing money in an investment over a 30-year period in the stock market in the United States, there will be zero occurrences of that happening. It's just never happened in the United States. And even a decade, Mac, if you look at it, if you invested all of your wealth right now in a broad stock market index right now, and you look back 10 years later from now, you will have not lost money in all but a handful of examples of 10-year periods of time from, the 1800s forward. Okay, I think they started keeping track in like 1875 or so, most of these things. So, do not, I would emphasize on your listeners not to give up on the stock market. It's your best chance for a long-term investment, but in the short term, things can go to hell. The Great Depression can happen. And, what happened in the Great Depression? What happened in Katrina? And we can talk about how to be prepared for those kinds of things.
So look, I have a disagreement regarding the stock market because I don't believe that it's going to exist. I don't believe that after this whole thing comes crashing down. I mean, we've got a housing bubble, an auto loan bubble, student loan bubble. Obamacare itself is a bubble. We got the stock market itself is a bubble. Our actual dollar, the U.S. dollar itself is a bubble. The only reason why people continue to sell oil in U.S. dollars is because the U.S. dollar has shown strength and has shown longevity, and people trust it. But the issue here is, we have $20 trillion, more than that now, in debt. And the U.S. petrodollar itself is a dangerous bubble, which is causing us to be more worried about what's happening in places like the Middle East because of stability reasons, because that oil must keep flowing, and we need the pipeline. That, again, I argue that the whole issue here, why we're saying Assad must go, is not because we give a crap about what's going on humanitarian-wise in the Middle East. If that was the case, and we would be in Africa right now stopping warlords from killing people over there. But we don't care about those guys because we're not dependent on their oil. So right now we're stuck projecting foreign force outward to stabilize the world, to control the world through U.S. hegemony, which I don't think that we need to do. If we're energy independent, we don't need this. But I digress. We're not talking about solutions because no one's listening. So the point is that when all of this comes to head, all of these bubbles come crashing down, and they are going to come crashing down hard. There will be a weakened U.S. dollar. Therefore, we'll lose the petrodollar. People won't sell oil in U.S. dollars anymore because it won't be worth the paper it's printed on. The foreign money that's being held in foreign bank accounts will come flooding back into the United States, our economy, and we'll see hyperinflation, which will further add to the U.S. dollar not being worth anything. So again, I argue that this whole system of currency, the U.S. dollar, the artificial stock market, which, by the way, I'm looking at an article right now from August 2016. This is ZeroHedge.com, written by Tyler Durden. Says Fed admits another $4 trillion in QE will be needed to offset an economic shock. What are they going to do? They're going to pump $4 trillion into the stock market. This is why we're in this bad of a situation to begin with. So, again, this is why I disagree. I don't see this system being here anymore. What you have in the stock market will be gone. Whatever you have tangible, if you have land, you have gold, you have cash, your cash will be valuable for a time until hyperinflation really hits in, and at that point, it's not going to be worth anything. People aren't going to want it anymore. They're going to be wanting either an asset to trade with. A barter system essentially will be established in the meantime, but eventually a new global currency will be established either through global government or through China and Russia. They're colluding together to back their currencies with gold. So I think they're going to try to be the new answer. And as I've reported on previous episodes, China has got their currency, the renminbi, added to the SDF, the IMF currency basket. So it seems like they are setting themselves up to be the alternative when this system comes crashing down. What do you think about all that, Dan?
Well, Mac, you have to look at it historically. And historically, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying history would show that over longer periods of time, it's like if we're talking a decade, okay, that the safest place for your investment in a period of high inflation is the stock market. It's not even close. And I'll put up a couple of easy graphs It'll show you that.
Okay? Is that even in comparison to gold? I'm just curious.
Because they're real. Because they are yes, in comparison to gold as well. For a very short period of time. See, the problem will be is that you'll have very sharply falling stock prices. So the tendency would be is to have to sell those stocks if you have to pay your bills, right? And so you're accepting, you have $1,000 in stock. It's now worth $100 in stock, but you've got to eat. So you're going to sell your $1,000 for $100 and feed yourself. Okay. On those short periods of time, precious metals will hold up better. And I mean, we wanted to talk a little bit more about precious metals and hard assets. Okay, will definitely retain their value. Property will retain its value. Land, lakefront property, for example, they're not making any more of it. Okay,
yep.
That will hold its value. Gold will hold its value. I recommend to friends, and I'm not making any investment advice or anything here, but to hold a small percentage of your assets in gold. I hold a year's worth. I have a year's worth of physical gold. Okay, I can put my hands on. Make sure it's not in ETFs because you're never sure whether those contracts on gold will be delivered.
What do you mean by ETF?
ETF is a exchange-traded fund. So basically, you pool with a bunch of other investors, and you have a bunch of contracts for gold, which can be called for real assets.
Oh, you're talking about paper gold, basically, right?
Yes, paper gold, correct. Okay. Paper gold. That's exactly what it is. And that I would avoid entirely. But holding physical gold in a safety deposit box or buried in your backyard, I would say that those are, and gold is one thing. It's great to have large assets, that can get you through a bad time. But in the case of the Weimar Republic, what you really wanted is small pieces of silver. And I really want to emphasize to people that you should hold a bunch of junk silver. Do you know what junk silver is, Mac?
Yeah, it's like you're talking about like necklaces, jewelry, that kind of stuff, right?
Nope.
Or like
Junk
scrap
silver has a specific meaning in the precious metals market. It's 75% silver, 25% other things, usually nickel, and U.S. currency was made of this stuff, I think, before 1962. Somehow it's around my birthday, okay, my year of birth. And so you can buy bags of 50-cent pieces, Mercury dimes, Eisenhower dimes before 62, and you buy it for the price of 75% silver, okay? And so what you've got is a bag of or a roll of small pieces of silver that can be used in a Weimar-type situation to exchange for valuable gold. And if you look back to the Weimar, that's exactly the things that were useful. People have large pieces. You have a silver bar. What the hell are you going to do with it? You're going to take a hatchet with you down the marketplace, Mac, and shave off a little for the guy? Doesn't work, okay? But what people have and what people understand are what's real silver. And you'll be able to exchange that in marketplaces for food, for rent, for whatever, for shelter, things like that, for water, all kinds of things. So in that kind of Armageddon type of situation with an economy, I believe that having a bag of, you can buy one for, you can buy $1,000 bags and $3,000 bags. I know maybe that's a lot for people, but you can also buy rolls of Mercury dimes. I would start by buying those, rolls of Mercury dimes and that kind of stuff, and have those. Put them under your floorboards and have them in case of and we could talk about more short-term, problems with an economy, like, for example, Katrina. I have a friend who went through Katrina, and after he was done, I was really anxious to talk to him, because he was right in the middle of it and had to get the hell out of there. I said, what were the things that people needed and people valued? Water, food, whatever. He said the two things that I wanted to have were a roll of $20 bills, so that you can peel off. All the bank machines were shut down, okay? Yeah. So have what I call a redneck emergency fund, okay? A bunch of 20s, okay? 20 seemed to be the number that people were taking. You want to ride in the back of my pickup truck as far as here? Give me three $20 bills, okay? And then you were all set. And the other thing was a loaded handgun that you could display on your hip that would keep people away from your stash, okay, whatever you had. People weren't bothering anybody, but they were actually physically assaulting people and taking their goods off them, if they're hungry enough, and somebody's got a big piece of food. But in any case, so those are the things that you want to think about having around as far as, I'm concerned and what I think about.
So, I don't necessarily disagree with you, especially in terms of the cash. Again, I argue that when it comes crashing down, hyperinflation won't set in immediately, but it will happen at some point shortly after the crash. And again, I'm not trying to predict timelines here. I think that the crash itself will probably happen. Again, I'll probably be wrong on this, and that's fine, by around 2018. Because I just don't see how they can maintain this thing. Again, they continue to artificially inflate all of these bubbles, and we're so over leveraged right now that it's just mathematically impossible for this to continue perpetually. It just can't happen. So I argue when it comes collapsing down, because we've made it so much worse, the entire system goes. And when it does, paper will eventually be worthless. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it, especially during the initial stages, because it will be able to get you goods, probably cheap. It will probably be able to be used to like bribe people. Hey, there's a checkpoint set up here. I want to get through. Let me grease your palm. Things like that. It could be beneficial. And if you haven't already, which I argue, you should get your preps in order. If you aren't preparing food right now, you really ought to be, because it's going to be vital. As soon as something like this happens, I want you to imagine, listeners out there, imagine a scenario where money is not worth anything, and there's no system right now set up to replace the U.S. dollar. There's nothing in the country that we can use to exchange goods, exchange for goods and service other than goods and services. We can only barter back and forth. If that is the case, which I argue, we're heading for that period of time. And it may not last long like that, but if that happens, you have to have something that you can eat. You have to be able to put food on the table. And I argue you should be storing up the nuts now, like instead of the what was it, the squirrel and the grasshopper story that we hear back in the day. We should be doing that now. Prepare. Again, don't be distracted by this election and put all of your hopes and dreams behind your candidate, because no matter who gets elected, this is going to happen. And I argue, underneath Donald Trump, I think it'll happen sooner because of tariffs, and I don't want to get into that, but underneath Hillary Clinton, I think she's going to continue to try to prop it up, but it will still collapse. It's a matter of time. And the point is that if you have cash, if you have physical cash, you can use that to go out and buy some more supplies when the poo hits the oscillating fan, or you can use it to exchange for other supplies among people instead of going to stores. Like I said, maybe bribe somebody to let you get away from a checkpoint or to get out of a bad situation or get a ride, as Dan suggested. I argue that when it all does come collapsing down, this is when you need to be spending your money, your physical money, your cash, and fill some of these gaps that you may already have. But again, even by putting all of your faith in gold or silver, you can't eat gold and silver. And in this initial barter period, people may not want it in exchange for food. People may look at a bar of gold and say, well, look, I can't eat that, and I need to be able to eat this. What you're offering me may be valuable and way more valuable than what I have here intrinsically, but not right now. Right now, I need to eat. Right now, the only thing I would exchange this food for is maybe a box of bullets or something. That's the kind of stuff that we need to keep in mind. And I have an article here, by the way. This is written by Peter Schiff. This is schiffgold.com. It's titled "The Reality of Gold Ownership in a Currency Collapse." This is dated June 4th, 2015. So he's talking about buying precious metals and what it would be like in the event of an economic collapse. He wants to dispel a myth, and he goes on here. He says, the big myth, the whole goal of buying metals is to wait for them to rocket up in price so that you can one day sell them and make a huge profit. The reality, unfortunately, this rosy picture may not be totally realistic. Full disclosure, until recently, Peter Schiff, believed it himself. The reason for this is the gold price. If the gold price skyrockets, the U.S. dollars, in terms, the world at this point would be an entirely different place. You see, we expect currencies to fail because they are based on empty promises of governments. That is, government's treasury debt. Nevertheless, our current financial system is entirely founded upon this debt, and for now, it is still working more or less. But gold as money is different. It needs no third party to give it value. It is inherently a valuable commodity, and as such can totally extinguish a debt upon payment with no strings attached, no fiat currency. So one of the things he talks about here is actually how you may not be able to exchange gold for services, and you can read the rest of this article. I'll go ahead and link it on my on the event link here. But he talks about how you may not be able to exchange it for physical goods and services in this barter type system, and moreover, it may actually be dangerous for you to let people know that you have gold. So this also, again, I warn all the time about OPSEC, that's operational security. Be mindful of who you tell about your preps. Anybody that you tell, you have now included in your plan, whether or not you realize it or not, because they're going to come knocking on your door if they know where you live. So just be aware of that. But anyway, we got to cut to.
So have plenty of guns. Well, plenty of guns and ammo as well, right?
Yeah, well,
and other friends.
Even still, even if they know that you have those things, that could be dangerous to you. You know, but we have to cut to a commercial break. Dan, would you mind sticking with me through the break?
I'd love to.
Okay, all right. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Dan Sandini about the impending economic collapse, and he'll give his take on financial advice and things to look at. And also, I want to talk about this Deutsche Bank crisis. What's happening? Why are we seeing it? And what can we expect? And can this cascade across the international banking markets? We'll be right back. You guys don't want to go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
This is Dan Sandini of DaylightDisinfectant.com, citizen journalist, friend of the late Andrew Breitbart, and cohort of James O'Keefe. I listen to On the Move with Mack Worley because the only time he's wrong is when he disagrees with me.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Welcome to On the Move.
What? Going back old school with this intro. Heck yeah, man. Forgot about this. I forgot to put it in here.
Yeah, I heard that. I haven't heard that one in a while.
Yeah. So anyway, man, it's good to be back here. By the way, if you guys are just tuning in, we're talking about the impending economic collapse. I'm with Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. That's DaylightDisinfectant.com. You can get him on Twitter at DaylightDis. And we're talking about financial advice. What you can expect, first of all, in an economic collapse. What might you expect, and what might potentially be able to save your wealth if you have any, or it maybe even position you to be better off in an economic collapse than you otherwise would be. So, Dan, by the way, did you hear your endorsement of the show commercial there?
Oh, I did hear my endorsement of the show, and I do. Each week I listen to Mack Worley, who's always right except when he disagrees with me.
I like that, man. By the way, listeners out there, I want to hear what you guys think about our new commercials. I tried to spruce it up a little bit. I'm interested to hear your feedback. You get me on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow or Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it. So, Dan, moving on here, I want to talk about Deutsche Bank. So, from your perspective, what exactly is happening, and why should we even be concerned about what's happening with Deutsche Bank?
Well, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't be concerned about what's going on with Deutsche Bank. If Deutsche Bank fails, I doubt that it will result in a fail of the entire economy. Okay, I do not think that's going to happen, and it's not going to fail because the German government will bail it out. Companies like BMW and Mercedes and Siemens like to go into business deals with Deutsche Bank on their arm because it's just sort of a marketing thing, and they just will. But what's happening at Deutsche Bank is they're getting slammed from a number of different angles at once. And one of those things is apparently they owe $16 billion to the United States government, and they're adjudicating that right now with the Department of Justice. And I don't know what their balance sheet looks like right now, but did I say six? I think it's $16 billion that they're going to pay to the American government. And that rumor came out on Friday that they were going to settle on that, and that was substantially lower than what they expected. And so the stock price shot back up again because, of course, your stock is representative of the value of the assets and liabilities and cash flows of the underlying corporation. And if you've got a big debt to pay, well, of course, your stock shares aren't worth nearly as much. But if that gets cut substantially, so there was a rumor on Friday that they were going to settle for less, and the stock price kicked back up again. But it is just a rumor. That was on Zero Hedge this weekend, so I expect it to crash as soon as the markets open on tomorrow morning. They'll be opening pretty soon. They might even be open right now in the international markets. I think open in Tokyo like now. So
what do you think about this whole Deutsche Bank clients unable to access cash article that you linked me earlier today due to a quote-unquote IT outage or IT glitch? Do you think this is legit, or is this something that we should be concerned about?
If you're a person who holds your checking account at Deutsche Bank, and I know a lot of Germans who do, so you happen to be one of the people who are affected by that. Of course, it's a real world situation, but quite honestly, I think that they've got enough cash on hand that's not because of that. That is some IT glitch. They are going to fire 1,000 people. That was in that same article. It's in the last paragraph of that same article. Mac and I talked about an article I posted out on the Facebook event page. So if you're listening, hopefully that's still there. If you're listening to this podcast or you're listening now, you can go there and look at that. But so they are trying to trim their sails, so to speak, and firing 1,000 people. Hopefully, one of those 1,000 people they're firing over there is not one of the IT guys that's responsible for keeping the ATM up, right?
Maybe that's why there is an outage. Maybe they did fire him. Is that a possibility?
I don't know. Another problem that they have is, if you look at it, it's the same problem that we had back in 2008. I hate to say it, but Deutsche Bank is still tied up in a bunch of derivatives. I didn't have to read far into that article. Nobody knows how much the derivatives they have are worth that are on the books. And, these derivatives for people, that's kind of a complicated word for hey, I think I can say shit sandwich on your show. It's a shit sandwich, and basically what it is you take a bunch of these derivatives, or you take a bunch of great loans, 30-year mortgages that are performing very well, you put those on the outside of the shit sandwich, those are the bread, and then on the inside you've got a bunch of poorly performing mortgages on the inside of it, and you wrap it all together in one thing, you call that a tranche, and you sell it off in pieces to individual investors. And nobody knows what the real values of those things are because the agencies which rate the underlying assets inside of those tranches, they're not doing their job well. So you have no idea whether these things are AAA or AA or triple B or single B or whatever it is that's in there. It's like you can't tell. It's a shit sandwich, but you don't know how bad the shit is on the inside. It might be bologna or it might be dog poo. You have no idea. And so Deutsche Bank has a bunch of these on the books. So what are your sandwiches worth? Is that a good way to explain that? So what are your sandwiches worth? Nobody really knows, okay? It might be good sandwiches that you're ready to eat, but other stuff you would touch with a 10-foot pole, so you have no idea which sandwich you're going to get. Any case, so derivatives are still a huge, that's what caused the banking crisis where Bear Stearns went under back here in the United States back in 2008. And of course, we had under the end of Bush and the beginning of Obama, we've we've had several. What do we have? We had TARP 1, TARP 2, and they're still doing Q. What are we on, QE4? Is that what you were telling me?
Yeah, they're talking about doing a new QE4. This is from the Fed. They're saying that they may have to do. This one's $4 trillion that's going to be needed to offset the economic quote-unquote shock. Again, this is a total collapse. We're already in a recession, and it's about to come crashing down. We haven't experienced recovery. This has all been artificial. And again, the only reason why the stock market is at the all-time highs that we're seeing is because the government continually has pumped trillions and trillions of dollars into the stock market. And it hasn't benefited people like me. Maybe you've seen a benefit from it, Dan, since you actually do invest. But this is enriching the fat cat bankers and other hedge fund operators, people who play the stock market. I would argue are probably not everyday Americans. Most people probably don't even know how to play the stock market. So the idea that this is tax revenue being coercively taken from you and then pumped into a stock market to artificially inflate it and make it look great, because this is the economic indicator everybody looks at, even though it literally doesn't mean a thing because of the amount of manipulation that's being done with it. This money is being taken from you, not benefiting you in any way, listener out there. This isn't benefiting you, and it's helping to enrich other people. This is a massive redistribution of wealth program it's unprecedented, especially at a time when we have $20 trillion in freaking debt. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It is. You are redistributing taxpayer wealth into the pockets of people who own stocks, and there are people who should have gone to jail after the 2008, 2009 collapse at Goldman Sachs, and those people were protected because, of course, both Obama and Hillary Clinton have incredible, Timothy Geithner, all those guys, they have huge connections into these investment firms. So that at the DOJ, I believe at the DOJ, those people were found, there was reason for them to go after them, but the head of the DOJ decided not to pursue criminal charges. They supposedly still could. They don't have immunity, but those charges are getting pretty old by this time. Now it's, I don't know how long it's gone by. But you're 100% right, Mac, that the stock market is being propped up with artificial money. And one of the things, I put up a diagram on your show page of GDP. Now, GDP is a big word for people who don't know what it is, the gross domestic product of a country. And ours is the largest, in the world right now. We overpower China now by an amazing amount. You have to look at it. It used to be close. For a while it was close. But China has fallen off lately, and so the U.S. is out there by itself, as this huge producer of goods and services. No matter what people say, no matter what you read, we are still the largest economy on earth, And so that's what you have to say. Is the dollar going to fail? Well, we have the hugest economy on earth. But where I was going with that is our GDP, what you usually look for strength in an economy, is whether that's growing or not. Are we producing more goods and services quarter after quarter? And I believe it's 3 straight quarters of decline in GDP, in percent of growth for GDP. So I believe we have to decline in GDP. We have to have a shrinking economy for 3 straight quarters in order to qualify as a recession. So we do not have a recession if I look at that graph, Mac, but what we do have is a declining growth. So you're looking at it was above 2%, 3-4 months ago, and now it's slowly declining, and the projections on that graph from Zero Hedge were into negative territory. So it looks like we're heading for a recession.
And,
right?
Obama's, this is a CNSnews.com article written by Terrence P. Jeffrey, July 29, 2016, titled, "Obama May Be the First President Since Hoover Not to See a 3% GDP Growth." This is important. Granted, 3% he's been averaging somewhere hovering around 2%, but they keep having to change the projections, and as you've just pointed out, these new projections that they're coming out, it's continuing to get less and less and less in the GDP growth. So it's looking very likely that we're going to start seeing negative growth, which means the economy is not growing anymore. We're shrinking. And again, this is all because of this easy money. This is all coming back, and it's again, while at the same time of having these terrible fiscally loose policies, we are making it harder and harder for people to start jobs here, to create jobs, to produce products, to provide services. It's becoming damn near impossible to start your own business now. And this is, small businesses are the backbone of this economy. Now, granted, big businesses, that they do have a big niche and they do provide a lot of jobs. But if it's impossible, for example, just look at what Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they start computer companies in their garage. Bill Gates has already come out and said that he couldn't do what he did then now in this economy. There's too much regulation. It's not possible. There's too much collusion as well between big business and government. Crony capitalism, where they're cutting out deals. The government is cutting out deals that protect companies in order to stop the little guy from being a competitor. And really, competition is what this entire market is about. It's how we innovate. It's also how we create more selection, and therefore also through competition we reduce prices. The first computer was like $1 million or something. It was a ton of money. Then eventually when Apple came around, I think the first Apple was $10,000. The other, I think 2 years ago, I got a computer. I got it off eBay for less than $100. eBay, and this computer is massively more powerful than any computer that was built when it cost $10,000, and infinitely more powerful than the one that cost over $1 million. So, as competition affects the market, not only do prices get driven down, but the services or the goods, whatever is the competition involved in, it gets better. That's how we see innovation, and that's how we'll get ourselves out of this mess if we ever do. But again, we're heading right into the abyss with no hesitation whatsoever. It doesn't matter who wins the election. We're still driving off the cliff. So I want to talk for a moment here about gold to silver ratios historically. Do you have a lot of knowledge about this kind of stuff?
I really don't. I know that I would have to look at the correlation between those two things. I own them both, and I don't try and market time between those two things. When silver prices are low, I don't try and sell gold and a small amount of silver, like I said, to kind of get you through in a Weimar situation. But I really don't own very much silver at all. So you can teach me about it. I don't know.
So essentially, right now we have a 68.4, roughly 0.5 to 1 ratio between the price of silver and the price of gold. 68 to 1. So that means for every 1 ounce of gold, you need about 68 ounces of silver to match that price. That's the current ratio we have right now. Looking at gold prices, gold's right now $1,318.05. Silver is $19.25. These are per ounce. So that's 68.5 silver bars in order to get one value of gold. That's the ratio that we're at now. But do you know what the historic ratio before we started going off the gold standard and deviating far away from historic norms on the value of silver and gold? Are you aware of what it used to be?
No. So it's 68 to 1 now. What was it used to be? I have no idea.
Historically, it ranged between 14 and 15 to 1.
Well,
now I would have to say that the demand for gold went way down, and that makes sense because it used to be that you had to be able to exchange, right? That you could come to the United States with a $1 bill and get $1 worth of gold at the Federal Reserve window. I mean, but now that ended in Nixon. So, from there, the relative value of gold, because you can print money, you don't have to have gold in order to print money anymore. The relative value of gold relative to silver would become more back into balance in terms of its rarity in nature rather than dependent on a currency. I guess it makes sense to me, Mac. But keeping your head, Mac, the amount of gold that exists on Earth right now is as big as, take the Washington Monument. It's that high, that wide, and that long. It's a cube that big. That's it. That's all the gold there is. Okay, so it's a very rare
element in the world. And historically, in times of economic turmoil, and you read that great article from Peter Schiff, but Peter Schiff has never seen it. I've never seen it in my life. We've never seen the Great Depression or the Weimar Republic or Argentina here in the United States in our lifetimes. But I can guarantee you, if those conditions, I can't guarantee you, okay, if those conditions repeat themselves, gold value will definitely skyrocket relative to the dollar. And you've got contracts. My rent is, all right, let's say my rent is $1,500 a month, all right? I've got a contract for that for a year, okay, going out, okay? As you were saying earlier, an ounce of gold, a Krugerrand, is worth $1,300, $1,360 or something like that, right? Relatively worth a month's rent, right? Overnight, in a time of hyperinflation, in a series of say like monthly jumps, I'd have to do it. But within a few months, your Krugerrand's going to buy you 2 months. Okay, gold's going to go to well over $2,000 fairly rapidly, and that's because the people, they can't run the printing presses fast enough. They're running them as fast as they can. There's more dollars chasing. That's exactly what inflation is. More dollars chasing a fixed amount of goods and services. The prices are going to go crazy. But you just can't print gold. Okay, gold has always been the fallback. Okay, to people for in terms of what they'll accept for trading for barter purposes. But that's more in the long term. You're going to have to go to an assayer's office. They have some now here in Portland down, it's usually in the jewelry district, like you're pointing out earlier. In the jewelry district, you'll go in there and you'll be able to swap your gold out. They'll have little scales like they used to have from in the 1800s, right in the Wells Fargo office, and they will give you silver. They'll give you dimes or whatever they give you, small blanks of silver for your gold exchange, and you'll be able to use those for your day-to-day purchases. But that is an Armageddon type scenario. I mean, that is where you have hyperinflation like in a Weimar Republic, and we have never seen that in the history of the United States. But I'm saying that you worry about that, Mac. I know you're worried about it. If you are worried about that, really, your dollars, your physical dollar bills that you're holding aren't going to be worth much. Because inflation's going to be going crazy. You won't be down in Argentina, for example, in the supermarkets. They announce the changing prices over the loudspeaker of the supermarket. Try to imagine that. Ham's going up to $5 in half an hour. So if you want to buy it, now at $4, come and get your $5 pound of ham over here at the deli counter. That's what goes on down there. So you're going to want something other than physical dollar bills, Mac.
I completely agree. And back to that Schiff article, Peter Schiff, the reality of gold ownership in a currency collapse. He actually mentions this scenario specifically. He says if people have lost trust in the system, we're talking about a total financial collapse. On that day, your gold might be worth $10,000 or more per ounce, but you may not be able to go around easily and spend it on cash or a house or a car or luxuries that you once hoped for, because the world is going to be one big caddy bar the door situation. Again, this is the scenario he was talking about, is how you're not going to be able to really spend it, because that alternative, it's going to be more of like a barter system essentially. You're not, when we do get to the point of where the next currency fills the void, and we're away from the barter system, we're going to go back to more historic norms. And what I argue that we should be, again, I'm not a financial advisor. I just research this stuff, and I'm interested in it, and I really, really look into this kind of stuff. So I argue that this historical relationship between gold and silver is going to come back. We're going to see closer to 14 to 15 to 1 ratio for. And what I mean by that is 14 to 15 ounces of silver is going to equal, again, 1 ounce of gold in price. And if we're talking about a raise in price to up to $10,000 per an ounce of gold, let's just see what that would be at 15 of that. That would be $666.66 dollars per ounce of silver. That would be insane to be able to buy silver now for $19.25, and if the economy collapses, you're looking at $666.66 per ounce. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and silver, from that perspective, you're going to have a lot of silver on hand. That's the problem, I mean, silver is measured in, silver. What is it? $17 an ounce right now, or something like that?
$19.25.
$19.25 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a lot of silver to get a month's rent. I mean, I don't know where you're going to store it all. I mean, that's the problem. That's the problem with stuff. But so what you really want is
hold on, because you asked a really, I think, a valid question. At 40, let's say, for example, like 40 ounces of silver. 40 ounces of silver at that price, $666.66, is roughly $26,500. And if we're talking about first of all, 40 ounces of silver, that's not really that much. That can fit into easily a bag.
Okay.
I mean, that can easily fit into a bag. That can suitcase, no problem. Plenty of room for clothes and other stuff like that. This kind of wealth that you're talking about here is something that you can transport around with you, no problem. Right. And if we're not talking about the kind of inflationary period that we have now, let's actually look at historic prices of, let's say, land, for example. Back in the early 1900s here, actually, I'm looking at the wrong article here. Back during the I lost the article. I'll just go off my memory here and try to find it in a second. Oh, here we go. Homesteading Act of 1862. This is before we really started to see a lot of the inflation that we see now. The government was selling land at a cost of $1 per acre for 640 acres.
Wow.
And then eventually in the later 1800s, it went up to about $1.25 per acre. This is 1854 when they did that. So again, inflationary period. It used to cost pennies for a gallon of gasoline. It used to cost pennies for a Coca-Cola. Right now, we have seen such a huge inflationary period. If we're not in the same kind, if we're back to a gold standard where the cost of living isn't so high, $26,000 of silver is life-changing amount of money. You're talking about a real significant amount of wealth that you can. I mean, you could buy land, you can buy food, but you have to make it through. And again, this is why I'm warning you out there, do not get caught up in this election. No matter what happens, no matter who gets elected, it's going to get worse. I argue that we are now living in the best time that we're going to see in our life for the foreseeable future. We have access to more information, more entertainment, more luxuries, more comforts than we're going to have in the future. Your standard of life, at a minimum, is going to see a huge cut. And at worst case, we're talking about gloom and doom. So I hope that you will take steps. I don't care what you do, anything that you do to hedge your bets, anything that you do to protect yourself is going to be beneficial.
Mack, I wanted to sort of chime in on your land analysis. I put up a figure from Jeremy Siegel's book on your webpage, and I see that you liked on it, so you've seen it anyway. But it takes a look at what the total real return of a dollar is. So if you had a dollar back in 1801, and you bought stocks, bonds, bills, which are basically like bonds, they're just short-term treasury bills. They run in months instead of years, and typically it's from a government. They're government issued. And then there's gold and the dollar. So which ones of those would you have ended up best on? And it's great to give people that argument or that question without having them look at the chart. A dollar, if you held it in 1801 and you still held it now, would be worth, the buying power would be 0.07 cents, taking inflation in. So you've got 7 cents left of your dollar. If you had it in gold, it'd be worth about $1. And that's what happens with gold over time. It retains its intrinsic value over time. So $1's worth of rent in gold would buy $1's worth of rent in gold right now, okay, from 1801. That's basically what that says. Bonds, okay, we'll skip bills and go up to bonds. Your $1 in bonds would be worth almost $1,000 in 2001, $952, okay, about $1,000. And if you invested that $1 in the stock market back in 1801, you would have $600,000. Try and get your mind around that right now. That's what kind of growth the stock market has had over time. $600,000 worth of buying power from a dollar's worth of buying power back then. Now, of course, that's reinvested dividends. So when a stock pays you a dividend quarterly, stocks just don't sit there. Gold shines, okay? It's great. If you go to your safety deposit box and opens it up, it's in there and it shines at you. That's about all you got. Boy, that's pretty to look at. Your stocks, come hell or high water, if you own like railroad stocks or you owned electric stocks or anything over long periods of time, every quarter you're going to get a dividend check. And if you reinvest those, see, that's where a lot of the power and the growth of stocks is if you take your dividend and buy more shares and set your accounts to do that, over time you experience these phenomenal growth of $1 into $600,000. I highly recommend that book. I'll write it on the webpage on what it is. It's Jeremy Siegel. He's the head financial guy at the Wharton School of Business. He's no dummy. You'll see him on Marketplace. You'll see him in the Wall Street Journal. Jeremy Siegel, and the name of the book is Stocks for the Long Run. He uses it for his class, but it's infinitely readable in charts like this one. And I would really, if you really want to make money over time and learn what it takes to retire, how many people do you know? How many people can you talk to that retired at 43? I did it, and I'm no genius. It's extremely simple. Anything by Jeremy Siegel. And I recommend, for basic finance, if you have a lot of debts, or you're looking at how to just get ahead simply, anything by Dave Ramsey. I started writing some stuff one time for myself to publish, and I learned about Dave Ramsey and started reading everything Dave Ramsey says. You're going to be rich, particularly if you're in your 20s, your early 20s, and you start doing what that guy tells you to, have zero debt, invest in mutual funds, and carry zero debt, don't buy new cars, things like that. You're going to make a shit ton of money over your lifetime, and you'll be able to retire. If you're in your 20s and you do what Dave Ramsey says, you will be able to retire when you're in your early 40s. How's that for something you can learn on a Mack Worley show today? Do exactly what he tells you.
I just hope that translates over to the future, because, again, I think the whole game is changing, and I think we're going to be looking at a radically different world. But Dan, we got to cut to another break. Are you okay with sticking with us to it?
I will stay with you for another segment if you want to talk some more, Mac. I definitely will.
Yeah, I love having you on. I absolutely want to keep you around. So, all right, we'll be right back after this break, folks. You don't want to go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashawworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Partisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're in the Overdrive hour. This is the hour where we get to all the stuff we didn't have time to. And first of all, I just want to say, if you have anything on your mind, if you have something that you got a question, comment, concern, gripe, complaint, something like that, please give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. You got a question for me or Dan Sandini of thedaylightdisinfectant.com, please feel free to chime in here and let your voice be heard. So before we move on to the next topic, Dan, I actually want to wrap up this topic that we were actually talking about before as far as inflation. I pulled up an inflation calculator, and I did some math here. I'm looking at, from 1913, the rate of inflation between now and then. So remember the example of 40 silver ounces that I was talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now in our current market, that's $19.25 per ounce of silver. So you times that by 40, all right? That's roughly $770 because we're talking about on spot. In reality, you're probably going to pay a little bit more because if you go through like a place, and I'll give you my recommendation of who I have purchased gold or silver through in the past. That's not to say that I own any right now, but if you are looking for a place that you can trust, I know I have in the past purchased gold from apmex.com. I am not getting paid from them, by the way. I would gladly take their money, though, but they have yet to sponsor. So I'm just saying.
I shop there as well. I shop there as well.
It's a good place, and you can get.
You won't get ripped off.
You will not get ripped off, first of all, and they will buy your gold back. They'll buy your silver back. And the great thing about it, if you're not, Dan, he suggested buying junk silver, and that's a great method as well. Another way that you can go about it is to get these little Swiss Pamp little cards. Basically, it's all sealed in a vacuum sealed little plastic package, and it's got the stamp from the actual mint that it's 0.999 purity of silver or gold if you go with that. If you end up getting like bullion, those are good methods to go about doing it, and you know how much you're getting. So roughly, again, that'd be $770 to invest, and you can buy this in $19 and a quarter increments. So if $770 is outside of your range, which I don't disagree, that's a lot of freaking money. I would have a hard time doing that myself. So if you can only buy a little bit of time, let's say a paycheck at a time, buy $19 and a quarter worth of silver a time. If you can get yourself up to 40 ounces of silver, let's look at what that would be in the inflationary calculator. In 1913, if you had with the rate that we were talking about, what it would translate if we were back to the 15 or 14 to 1 ratio between gold and silver price, if gold was at $10,000 an ounce, which we heard Peter Schiff saying that it could possibly be. No one really knows if the economy collapses. If we're talking about a total economic breakdown, $10,000 an ounce, that would make each ounce of your silver worth $666.66 roughly. And that would translate to be about, for 40 ounces of silver, I know I'm giving a lot of numbers here, so let me just refresh here. With that in mind, 40 ounces of silver would be $26,640. So the rate of inflation, and compared to what it was back in the day, in 1913, $26,640 was the equivalent to $648,113.53. It's got a cumulative rate of inflation of 2,332.9%. So, as I've said, look, if you take small little steps to hedge your bets, where you're not really talking about a huge commitment at a time, $19.25 at a time to get an ounce of silver, you could potentially hedge your bets in in a hyperinflation scenario or an economic collapse scenario, to where you can have a huge amount of purchasing power, because we won't be, when everything settles, when we fall into a new currency, whatever it is, everything will be a lot cheaper, because whatever that currency is likely to be on the gold standard. Therefore, that silver to gold ratio will be back to the historic norms of somewhere between 14 to 15 to 1. So this is my advice. And granted, Dan, you have your school of thought right now is how you've been successful, and believe me, I understand. My concern is that the game is changing, and all of the rules are changing, and things that we're used to seeing in tactics that we're used to doing might not be the same in a new environment. We have a caller calling in here. Let me go ahead and take the call. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Sam, and I'm from Florida.
Hey, Sam. Oh, what's on your mind?
Sam Whitfield? Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Dan Sandini.
Oh, hey, Sam. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind, bud?
Not much. Well, I know that you guys are talking economics right now and how the market is going to collapse, but I know that you guys had some stuff planned for the Overdrive hour, and I was just wondering. You guys can finish this segment if you want, but I was wondering if you guys had heard anything about ICANN switching over to the United Nations, and how basically the U.S. no longer has any control over the Internet as of yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, I've been warning about this, and by the way, as far as I'm concerned, I'm good with moving on to the next topic. So I appreciate you calling in here. I did hear about the ICANN, and I've been warning about this for the last few weeks, and it looks like we lost control of the Internet. We now have handed it over to ICANN. What are your thoughts on this, Sam?
Well, I on my blog and my podcast, I've been talking about how there seems to be a huge problem with the Internet starting to be censored, and more specifically, this is causing problems for more conservative and libertarian bloggers like myself, like Dan, and like you, who are activists for free speech and, for free journalism. This really seems like a governmental attack on us and against those who want to fight against social justice and big government and cultural Marxism. There was also the big thing a couple of weeks ago about how YouTube is starting to censor content and demonetizing videos from anyone that they deem politically incorrect or content inappropriate. And they really haven't defined anything as to what that is, but to me this seems like a big collusion of sorts between the UN and Google, which is a big corporate shell of a corporation. And things just aren't looking too good for the economy or for free speech right now.
You're preaching to the choir, man. Honestly, I completely agree. And regarding YouTube, I can speak from personal experience. I'm on YouTube, and I've had nothing but issues with these guys continuing to essentially, they can do whatever they want. It's their privately owned platform. That they can do that. But I'm personally not a fan of censorship and shadow bans and things like that. And what I look at is a continuing fight here. I'm scrolling through my videos right now in my feed here, and I have issues where they have demonetized my video, saying that it's not eligible for monetization, and it's these podcasts that I'm getting the monetization shut off on. Like, I've got my episode 133, Where Were You on 9/11? They disabled monetization on that. Episode 134, it's under review because they already disabled the monetization on that one. And going down to episode 126, that one's not eligible for monetization, nor is 125. I mean, they do this to me week after week after week, and I know I'm not alone. So I know.
Well, you can fight those, Mac, and we should have had this conversation earlier. But there's something called fair use, and for you too, Sam. You can, if you want to talk about 9/11 and you want to grab 15 seconds of Tom Brokaw talking about it on NBC News. It's been upheld multiple times in copyright courts that you can do that, and you can legally, but you have to fight back on YouTube.
So the issue isn't with the fair use, because that's originally an issue that I've had, but this is accelerated recently, and now what they're saying is that it's not eligible for monetization because it's not suitable for advertisement, not because I'm in violation of copyright, not because of anything else. Believe me, I know the fair use laws myself, and I've been very stringent on keeping. As long as you don't play the full body of the clip, and you're keeping in mind that you're not playing like for the entire thing, and as long as you're commenting on it and you're adding to it or making a parody of it in some way, it's okay to use. But again, what they're saying is that it's not suitable for advertisement, and it's because of the content in some way or another. I've had various videos with the same problem, and I file for the review and I get denied, and the video is completely at that point ineligible. So it's and one thing I would add too, if you look over their terms of service, which I have done since they redid this, their languaging for what is content appropriate, it's so vague in terms of what they're actually describing that there's no that there's really no way to properly discern it. I mean, I even took it over to a friend who is studying law to see if he can make heads or tails of it, and it was so vague that really, a lot of people who have legal degrees and whatnot cannot figure out what the new terms of service are like. And, and it's not direct censorship in the sense that they're shutting us down, but like a lot of people make money off of their YouTube videos as a living. And so what do you do if you want to shut someone down? You take away their income so that they can't make their money from what they're doing right now. Yeah, you disincentivize them to continue doing what they're doing because they're not making money that maybe is sustaining their ability to do it, And for me, I'm not making a ton of money off YouTube AdSense, so it's not the end of the world if they take away some of my YouTube cash coming in or whatever. But it does.
No, neither am I.
Yeah, I mean it is something that's kind of, it's just like a jab in the eye, and unfortunately it's something that we have to deal with as libertarians, as conservatives, as people who are advocating for policies that may be something contrary to what YouTube wants, and it's unfortunate that we don't have a competitor out there that we can just switch to and get the same platform without the censorship. This is a free market solution, and I just wish something else would come along that I could switch to, because
it's like paper. I mean, I had this discussion with Breitbart. I had it with James O'Keefe, and we had talked about this, and they had attacked this from another perspective a while ago. They had done it in terms of identifying someone personally in a video. So if one of the ways we use to fight the left is that we film them doing their absurd things like swearing or breaking windows or whatever, and identify them by face and name in the video. And so they were using the policies, the YouTube policies, to have our videos taken down. And I've never had them successfully taken down. I fought it successfully twice now, based on the fact that I'm a legitimate news outlet. I appear on news shows. I can list those news shows, and I've been in movies, and I know these people in the business, and I've written that up, and I've fought it successfully. But I can't think of the number of people that have just had to throw in the towel on that, and the left gets away with it in the new media because people don't know how to fight back using the YouTube policies and procedures. Yeah. And this is just one more angle. They can't make any money off your videos, so I guess they're leaving it up, but they're demonetizing it, I guess. So that wouldn't hurt me. That wouldn't hurt me because, as you guys say, I don't use it as my form of income. I really, it bothers me a little bit because the views don't count, and I'm sort of a view whore. But in terms of the money thing, it doesn't bother me at all. But when they take it down, which is what they do, in terms of the you identified me personally, take the video down, that really gets me, and I have successfully fought that every time. And those people are still tarred and feathered with those videos for the rest of their life. You're going to make a fool out of yourself by by beating up some lady in the Tea Party, you are going to have your name on YouTube for every Google search from a future employer. As far as I'm concerned, you're going to stay out there. So as long as I'm drawing air, I'm going to do everything I can to fight for that anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and Mac, you did bring up one thing which I do kind of disagree with, which is that you're saying that YouTube is a private company and they can do whatever they want. And for the most part, I would agree with that. However, companies like YouTube and Google have marketed themselves or have tried to market themselves as public utilities. That's how they've tried to label themselves. So I would take the Gavin McInnes approach to this and say, all right, well, if you're going to label yourself as a public utility, then you cannot have the caveat of censoring who you like to if you're going to label yourself as a public utility.
Oh, yeah.
If not, I agree that's completely fine. But like when Twitter banned Milo Yiannopoulos and then tried to claim, oh, we're a public utility for everyone, no, that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
They can't make that claim.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that point. Especially, in terms of anything that's using public funds. If you are receiving money from the taxpayer till at that point, you don't have the same rights as a private entity at that point, because you now are essentially government. You are intermingled with government, so you shouldn't have the right to start using your discretion to be able to remove somebody's video because it offends you or whatever reason. You are. I think if you're receiving federal funds, you should be restricted in the same way that the federal government is, or a government period is, from violating those rights. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Sam?
No, I can't really think of anything else to add other than that Dan is absolutely 100% right all the time, and you should listen to him more often.
Yeah.
Except when Sam is right.
Yeah.
Then we're both wrong. But I agree with you guys. YouTube is like paper now, right? In the Gutenberg era, if you only had one paper supplier or something like that, but there's really no other place to go. And they really, the government should take you have to be careful. What's the solution, right? You want the government to go in and give them some guidance on that? I don't know. That'd be worse. So I'm trying to think of what the right answer is, and start your own YouTube company, right?
Yeah.
Start a Twitter or start your own. And Milo is a scary. That's a very scary thing. Milo was Twitter.
For those of you out there, by the way, Dan, can you explain who Milo is for people out there who aren't familiar with this?
Since I would describe him as, let's see, we talked a little bit about this, but this, Milo is here he is to me, Sam, and you can chime in and correct me, but he's a young, gay conservative, and he's in a war on public correctness. So he's in a war against these social justice warriors that insist you don't say certain things because you can trigger them and they have to retreat to their safe space. And Milo is perfect at getting in their faces and saying all these things, exercises freedom of speech. And he is the technical director, I think I might have it right, or at Breitbart. I believe he is. He's a flamboyant guy, spoken, great guy to tune into. He's at Nero. Is he still off of Twitter? Because he was at Nero on Twitter.
Yeah.
But now.
Unfortunately, they slapped him with a lifetime ban, so he's not getting back on there ever. There is. I interviewed on my podcast with Field Analysis a few weeks ago. I interviewed one of Milo's close friends, who is also an app developer, and apparently there's a new social network called Gab.ai. It's GAB.ai, and apparently it's like a new alternative to Twitter that is cropping up because I guess so many conservatives and libertarians have been banned from Twitter already, and he's on there. But the whole thing in terms of this election for me you're talking about how you're worried about the economy collapsing and whatnot. I'm worried at this point too, besides the economy, about cultural Marxism and social justice taking over. Because if the economy collapses, then you're going to have all these knuckleheads like occupying like Black Lives Matter, calling for anarchy, and they're going to say, "Oh, the economy has collapsed, so hey, we might as well establish a new system of government and turn it into communism." I would not be surprised if that's where this goes. So,
yeah,
well,
I completely agree that there are issues here with the. Again, I think that the culture war is essentially being lost on our side here, and again, I argue that it's this ultimate. None of what is happening. The biggest problems that we're facing right now, I argue, in 10 years, they're not going to be the same if this economy collapses because of the aftermath, the shocks that are going to come to this. And again, I've been telling my friends and family and listeners out there who I consider close family here, extended family, so to speak, we have to get away, or at least have a plan to get out of the cities. I argue that the cities are going to be on fire when people aren't receiving their welfare checks and their food stamps in an economic collapse. And even if the government continues to send this stuff out, if we're looking at a hyperinflationary period, this money isn't going to be worth anything, so you're not going to be able to get anything with it. The amount of if you think the riots in the street are bad now, thanks to Black Lives Matter, imagine how it's going to be when these checks stop rolling in. These cities are going to be on fire, and I argue that for the most part, the situation will either A, burn itself out, B, gangs in places like Chicago are eventually going to take over and become essentially a fiefdom. If you research the fall of the Chinese dynasties, what led to communism in China, this is essentially what happened when the government fell because the last dictator essentially died, and there was no one left to take the reins of power. All these different generals of the army, they just started popping up and saying, "Okay, well, I have my own little fiefdom here, and another one would do this." There was over a dozen of these that popped up. I argue the same thing will happen here, except it'll be a variety between, criminal warlords from gangs. We'll have state and local governments that may have some level of existence that will still happen. But for the most part, I mean, the federal government, I argue, is going to be gone, and I argue that we're going to be left to burn. I think the rest of the world will leave us to burn. And again, based on DHS predictions of what would happen during an EMP strike, and that's basically just saying if there's no power. And I argue in an economic collapse, there won't be power because no one's going to go to work at the power station if their paychecks aren't worth the money it's printed on. So you're going to be seeing the same impact. And the DHS, they say that within the first 6 months, 60% of Americans will die in an EMP strike. So I argue you need to get the hell out of the city, have a plan to evacuate at a minimum, because they're going to be a dangerous place to live. And again, I think the culture war that we're losing now, the Marxism that's spreading, the increases in the federal Leviathan, even so far as to say the globalization and centralization of power into foreign bureaucratic hands, I think a lot of that isn't going to be as big of a deal, because I believe the only people that are going to be left essentially are going to be the people in the country, and we're the ones that are typically not voting for Marxism, not voting for these things, and we're not falling into this. Sam, what do you think about that?
So I'm curious. I would have to agree with you that if the economy collapses, I mean, yeah, out of the city right away. The thing that I would ask, though, too, is this is where a lot of conspiracy theorists. I'm not calling you conspiracy theorists, but this is where a lot of people who are doing gloom predictors 24/7 tend to stop right in their tracks. I would ask, okay. So let's say the economy collapses and everything turns to total crap. What then needs to happen for us to restore power? Because unless there's a plan, unless people can somehow plan to restore order, we're all kind of screwed.
Completely.
So
agree.
I guess
Even if there's a plan, you're going to have a problem because the military's not going to show up if you don't pay them either. Neither are the cops. Who's going to salute smartly and come to work and agree to follow the general's orders? I think you're more likely to get groups as Mac, you were alluding to. It's going to be the Crips and the Bloods or whoever they are. Okay, you're going to get the black inner city gangs versus this may sound racist, but it's going to be the motorcycle gangs. The right wing motorcycle Trump supporters versus versus that's going to be your two heavily armed, but they're going to win because there's a lot more preppers on their side. They're going to be people with real things you need. They're going to have food and they're going to have food and water and those kinds of things that you really need. Toilet paper, and the people in the inner cities are going to have a lot of bullets and drugs, but they're not going to have much except for what they can steal at the supermarkets. I guess those are large deposits.
There's only going to be so much of that to go around, though. I mean, like I said, eventually I think it'll burn itself out, and really you're going to have little fiefdoms that pop up. I argue, if we're in this doomsday scenario, which again I know it seems like a conspiracy, Sam, and I don't, I don't disagree with you. I know it's far fetched, and I know it sounds wild, but it's where I see that following if there is no federal government, if there's no checks coming in, and things start spiraling out of control, and there's no government to come in and stabilize. Now, what I think that we can do, a solution, and the only solution I know of, is to continue doing our part. Dan, Sam, you each have your own little avenue of what you're doing, and I have my own little one here. And I say, hey, guys out there, you're listening to the sound of my voice, prepare, survive. We're going to need you to at least remind people of the principles of this country, remind people of what this nation was and what it can be. And again, I argue that most of the problems that we face now, maybe that utopian society that I had a conversation with James at the beginning of the show from Detroit Open Carry about voluntarism, maybe we can get to that point. Maybe, but the question is will there be enough of us left that will promote this idea? Will there be enough of us left that will actually try to continue educating and pumping the brake when people want to initially throw all their trust behind some strong man that can keep them safe?
Yeah, I actually wanted to comment about what James, your guest, was saying in the first hour. The problem with the volunteerist idea, I like the idea in theory, but it goes back to what the founding fathers believed in with John Locke. The problem with the volunteerist society is it goes against Locke's philosophy, which is that men are good, but men are also self-interested. So we need a certain form of...
Oh, Sam, you're cutting out, man. You still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Go ahead. What were you saying, man?
Okay. Yeah, what I was saying is what James was saying about a volunteer society, that sounds good, all good and well in theory, but the problem with that goes back to John Locke and what he said about how men are basically good, but men are basically self-interested as well. So, if you have some sort of minimal government to enforce laws, men are just going to be self-interested, and it's going to be anarchy.
And I mean,
so
that's what James is apparently for, as far as he's calling himself an anarchist. And again, there's some nuances in his philosophy again that I think he would explain a little bit better. But and I don't want to give him a fair shot. I don't want to set up a straw man argument, but. What my concern here is as you said, people are self-interested. If there is no again, he liked to use the term monopoly on force. If there is no monopoly on force to prevent people from violating the rights of others, to secure property rights, then other people, namely in that scenario, like a Crip and Blood gangs that are setting up their own little fiefdoms, who's there to stop them. Yet maybe an individual would be defending his lot. Maybe his neighbors will come together and help him defend. But will that be enough? Again, there is a reason why a society does need a monopoly on force. But the issue is that monopoly on force should never, under any circumstance, even be allowed or have the ability to go against an individual's rights, because the entire purpose of that monopoly of force is to protect the rights. That's why in any situation when there's no government, people put their backs together and protect one another. And if suddenly in that group you're using that group to violate the rights of one of the people in the group, well then now we've hit a tyranny of the majority. This is, again, I believe, as our founders believe, that there is a need for some very, very limited government, and that limited government should be restricted, and there should be checks and balances, and I want the government to be as stagnant as possible. I want Congress to not be able to get anything done. In fact, I'm a big fan of having, co-presidents. I want 3 presidents of the United States at one time, and you have to have 2 out of 3 in order to get anything done on their side. I want more checks and balances, and that's why I'm in favor of voluntary taxes, because I look at that as a check and balance from the people. If the people don't want that service, they won't pay for it.
I would have to agree. Dan, you were going to say something, and then Mac and I both cut you off.
Well, I think you guys covered what I was going to say, so I sort of go back there. But I'm on this whole volunteerism thing. I'm just dumbfounded, and I think, Mac, your predictions of gloom and doom. Look, you guys are too young, okay? But I went through Carter, okay? Carter and Reagan, and it looked terrible. By the time Jimmy Carter, we had double-digit inflation, and we had just lost. He tried to rescue our Iranian hostages. We were counting it off day by day on the news where these Americans were in prison. It's like having American prisoners from ISIS. What do we have? 40-something people over there that were day by day. They were on the news, holding these people. And, it looked terrible. Things looked horrible. If you look at that graph that I stuck up online, you can see the economy go into the crapper, okay, under Carter. But it turned around fairly quickly once you had a steady hand. So I'm here to say, guys, it can look awfully bad for a long period of time. And, who knows what the U.S. military could do? Let's say, okay, so the U.S. military is using the Internet, okay, the unclassified Internet. They use both classified and unclassified. If they decide that's some sort of strategic threat, they'll go in and retake it over again. The United States will do what it takes to survive. I can guarantee you that. They won't let laws, as you both know, they won't let laws get in the way, international laws or domestic laws. Those laws are for other people. They aren't for people who run our government. That's one thing I've learned. So, the predictions of gloom and doom for the United States have been going on since I am cognizant of remembering. I can remember in the oil embargoes, okay, for them saying we would be out of oil. We would be out of oil, not crisis shortages. We would be out of oil by the year 2000. I can remember the gas shortages waiting in line and listening to that on the radio. So, the United States can survive for a very long time before things get to that, unless they nuke Washington. You nuke Washington D.C. But even then, right? You've got decentralized power. The states are going to still be there. I don't know. I think that the United States, you guys have greatly underestimated the chances of survival for the United States. And the danger with that is you do not invest for the long run, and that means owning stocks. I hate to say it, for I know how bad that sounds and how stupid it would sound in an Armageddon type scenario. But tried and true is the American stock market.
Well, I believe what you suffer from, Dan, is called a normalcy bias, and that nothing can ever happen because it's never happened in your lifetime. Although it has happened historically, time and time again, societies come and go, and this is what has happened. Empires fall. The Roman Empire, everybody thought it couldn't ever fall. It was too big to fail, so to speak. And eventually they couldn't pay their debts. They couldn't pay the military, and their military stopped guarding the wall, and eventually the barbarians were at the gates, and they realized no one was there protecting it, so they just flooded in. And you know, again, I don't know what's going to happen, and I have never in my life wanted to be wrong more than right now. I will eat some crow, and I'll love the taste of it if I'm wrong about this. But I don't see it happening. $20 trillion in debt. I remember not too long ago we were talking about how $16 trillion is the point of no return, and now it just doesn't seem to matter. Nobody seems to care. $20 trillion in debt, no big deal. We have bubbles after bubble after bubble. Our actual dollar itself is a bubble, and when it all comes it comes crashing down, and these bubbles burst. It's over. This currency is over. It's happened before. It'll happen again, and it's only a matter of time. And I believe that
we haven't had a currency failure in the history of the United States. I mean,
in the history of the United States, yes, but that's because we've maintained.
We've gone through, and what have we gone through? We're on our third central bank. We've had an era where during Lincoln that the Treasury printed its own money. We didn't really have a central bank. The Congress, decided how much they were going to print and when they were going to print it. And we had a country that dissolved itself. I mean, we had the North versus the South. I don't need to tell you, where half the country was burned to the ground. And still.
And we still maintained our currency.
You can go through a lot of crap, man.
We didn't get off of the gold standard until after 1912. I'm sorry. Actually, that's when we imposed. That's when we imposed income taxes. Excuse me, but Nixon. So Nixon took us off the gold standard, and it takes about, from what I'm looking at from historical comparisons here, it takes about people are speculating about 70 years roughly for the chickens to come home to roost once you start going off gold standards and start imposing these easy money policies. It's similar to what we're doing now. Historically, this has all been done before, and after about 70 or so years, this cycle comes to its end. Its actual end that we've continued to push it further and make the results, the impact so much worse. If we would have just faced not bailed out the banks, not artificially inflated the stock market, we would have felt so much pain here, but it would have been something that we'd already be over. We'd be past. And yet we've made the problem worse by dumping trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars into the stock market to do nothing other than just to enrich other people who are playing the stock market and to redistribute wealth from the average American to some fat cat who's profiting from it, and to make this thing that people look at as an economic indicator of how well your economy is doing that really doesn't.
And Mac, what you're saying isn't entirely true. I mean, corporations hire people and build new facilities and invent new products, and drug companies take the money that they get from the stock issues and they go out and invent new drugs so that people live longer and better lives. For examples, okay? So you can't just say that the money that goes into the stock market is just enriching fat cats. Certainly the prices of those shares could be considered to be artificially inflated right now. But, I think if you look, and I'll do some research after we get off, but, the price of the S&P 500, I'll bet it's not too far out of whack. It's probably pretty out of whack, but it's probably not too far out of whack.
Out of whack compared to what?
Well, compared to what it's, you have a ratio of goods and services that are produced compared to the value of the underlying corporation. So that, what's the real value of the company compared to what the stock, if you take all the stock that's issued by the company, what it's valuated on. There's ways of doing those comparisons and ratios, and I think it is overvalued, but, all we have to do is Google, is the stock market overvalued? And I'm sure it is, but it can get way out of whack and come back into whack without the country failing, I guess is what I want to say to you. And, it's always seems this way in the near term, and I'm sure. Can you imagine what it looked like in the middle of the Civil War when you were fighting? Did you really think America would survive? I think there are plenty of people who felt worse about it than you did, Mac. And, in the end, things pulled through. So,
I hope you're right. I mean, I want to have your sunny disposition. That's why you're daylight disinfectant. So, I I hope that I'm wrong and that you're right. Sam, did you have any final thoughts? We're going to cut to a commercial break here in a minute. I just want to make sure you can have your final say on the issue here.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with Dan. I have to largely think that I think it's always good to be cautious, like you are, but I also think it's good to be cautiously optimistic. I actually do think who becomes president is going to matter somewhat, as far as I mean, I don't know that either of the presidents can fix the economy, but hopefully Trump can start to undo some of the damage from Obama when he becomes president eventually.
There you go. I think Sam's got, and that kind of thing catches on fire. When you start eliminating government bureaucracies and reducing taxes so that businesses can grow themselves, that kind of stuff can catch on fire too, Mac, very, very quickly. I mean, you saw it in the 90s in the United States under Reagan. It was incredible. It was a great time to be alive and be an investor and see what's happening in the United States. So that it can turn around fairly quickly too. But I do think we have a period of pain to go through before that happens.
I don't necessarily think that we, like I said, I've been saying for a long time, we do not have to go to this collapse. The problem is the government is continuing to grow. And unfortunately, the way I see it, both of these candidates are talking about how they want to grow the government, not how they can trim it back. But we're out of time now, folks. We got to run. I'm going to cut to a commercial break, and we got to wrap it up with the next segment. Dan, Sam, I certainly appreciate you both calling in. And Dan, can you shout out your social media one time real fast, and then I want to have you do the same, Sam.
Absolutely. It's Dan Sandini, and check out all the videos at daylightdisinfectant.com.
All right, Sam, go for your stuff, too, because I know you got a podcast. I want people to check you out, too.
Thank you very much, Mac. You can find my website at thesamwhitfield.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at @SamDavid_NGC, and hit me up over there, and I'd be willing to talk to you.
All right, man. So. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for calling in, both of you guys. I really appreciate it, and I love the fact that we can disagree on stuff, and we're not ripping each other's heads off. It's one of the reasons why I like you two guys. So thanks for calling in, fellas.
You're welcome, Mac. Talk to you later.
All right, take it easy, guys. All right, folks, we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to wrap up the show. I've got a few other topics here that I haven't had an opportunity to get to, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to plow through it as quickly as possible in the last 15 minutes. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, gang, we got about 12 minutes left in the show. I'm going to try to plow through the news that we haven't had an opportunity to get to. Some of the topics. I want to talk about suing Saudi Arabia. So I have a few articles and clips and other kind of things like that to read here. First of all, nytimes.com. Saudi Arabia warns of economic fallout if Congress passes 9/11 bill. This article is from April 15th, 2016. I read this to you when it first happened. So the Saudi government, the Saudi foreign minister, delivered the kingdom's message personally during, I think it was March when this happened. He warned that he told lawmakers here in America that Saudi Arabia would be forced to sell up to $750 billion in treasury securities and other assets in the United States before they could be in danger of the assets being frozen in American court if we opened up the Saudi government from being able to be sued based on their role, if there was any role, in the September 11, 2001 attacks here in America. So, and some of these documents are sealed. We don't know. So we're working, and Obama has been opposing this entire time. He doesn't want anyone to be able to sue Saudi Arabia. Mainly, I would say either number one, he knows something that we don't know about their involvement, and that it could backlash on Saudi, and therefore they could actually, in fact, end up selling the $750 billion in treasury securities and other assets that they have here, which would cause a severe issue here in America. Now, experts are saying, the article continues here, it goes on, it says, several outside economists are skeptical that the Saudis will follow through, saying that such a sell-off would be difficult to execute and would end up crippling the kingdom's economy. But imagine if they actually do believe that their assets are in danger of being frozen. So perhaps Obama doesn't want that to happen, or perhaps he wants to continue hiding some information. I don't know. But he blocked it, and Congress overrode his veto of the Saudi 9/11 lawsuit bill. And this is an article on Bloomberg Politics titled "Congress Easily Overrides Obama Veto of Saudi 9/11 lawsuit bill." And this article is written by Stephen T. Dennis and Jim Rowley. Article is dated September 28, 2016. Congress turned aside a last-ditch lobbying effort by the White House in Saudi Arabia Wednesday and overrode President Barack Obama's veto of a bill that would allow the kingdom to be sued for its involvement in the September 11th attacks. The emotions of the bill, powered by the families of the victims of terrorist attacks, overcame the administration's concerns that the measure could set a precedent that could put the U.S. personnel overseas at risk. So he's arguing, from what I gather, that it could put America at risk from being sued from foreign countries due to our overseas involvement. So if that's considered terrorism by foreign bodies. So moving forward here, next article, Bloomberg.com, written by Andrew M. Harris. Article is dated September 30, 2016, titled "September 11th Widows Sue Saudi Arabia Following Congress Override." So they've gone forward with the suit now. A woman widowed when her husband was killed at the Pentagon on September 11, 2001, sued the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia just 2 days after Congress enacted legislation allowing Americans to sue foreign governments for allegedly playing a role in terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. So keep in mind here, the article continues. It says 15 of 19 men who hijacked airliners used in the attack were Saudi nationals. One jet struck the Pentagon, seat of the U.S. military. 2 destroyed the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York, while another crashed in a Pennsylvania field as its passengers fought back against the hijackers. So Again, that is, suspect when 15 of the 19 men involved in this were Saudi nationals. Now, Obama has been going on in saying that it was a mistake to for Congress to override in his veto, and this is something, a story that I'm following. I find it pretty interesting. I'm curious what you guys think about it. Give me either give me a call in the last few minutes, 360-450-5625. Again, 360-450-5625. We only got 7 minutes left in the show. You can also get me on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter. And I'd like to hear what you guys think about this. What do you think is going on? So moving on to the next story here. I do believe that we are, and I'm noticing we're not going to have time to get into negative interest rates. We kind of talked about them earlier, and bank recapitalization, bail-ins, but basically things are coming around the pike here, and that's all we can really say here because I'm running out of time. But I argue it's not a safe time to keep your money in the bank. I don't think that you ought to, and I think you ought to be diversifying your portfolio. All right, and I would argue that part of that diversification to hedge your bets is to pour money into food, precious metal, ammo, guns, things like that. If you want to take Dan's advice, I mean, more power to you. Historically speaking, it might pay off, and I could be totally wrong. The stock market may survive. I don't think it will, but maybe it will. Invest in that. Diversify. I'm just saying, spread out your investments. Make sure that you're protected under any circumstance. But I argue there's no real instance right now where you should have a crap ton of your wealth in the bank. It's probably not a wise move. But I digress. Let's move on to the next topic here. I want to talk about how we don't have time for this. How the U.S. will invade Syria. Let me just cliff note this. I believe that based on terror attacks that we're seeing now increasing in frequency, this is going to be the excuse for us entering into Syria in order to attack ISIS. Again, we have been arming, funding, training ISIS from the beginning, and our foreign policies of creating that power vacuum in the Middle East have actually created ISIS. So, again, this is all a facade. We are actively making this problem worse, and I do believe that terror attacks here, if they don't cripple us economically, if there's not a 9/11 style attack or bigger that crashes our economy and sends us to the brink, I do believe that we will end up with boots on the ground in Syria. And this could potentially, because right now this is a proxy war. Right now we're fighting, we're arming up our bad guys to fight Russia's bad guys. There are no good guys in this war. Even the moderate rebels are talking about aligning with extremists Al-Qaeda and ISIS now. So there are no good guys in this situation. This is a lose-lose war we need to stay out of. But again, the reason why we're involved is because of U.S. petrodollar, and we want that pipeline going through Syria up into Turkey and supplying oil to Europe. And, of course, sold in U.S. dollars. So I argue our involvement in Syria is, if it's not intentionally going to it cause us to enter into World War III with Russia and other foreign and regional powers over there, I argue that at least it puts us at risk of doing that. So I believe that we will eventually end up in Syria if the economy doesn't crash already. So and again, I think Russia, China, and other countries around the world are hedging their bets and hoping for a U.S. collapse. Another story here. Let's see. I don't have time. I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, folks. We don't have time to get to it all, but I want to talk about next week. We'll try to cover more about invading Syria, which I do believe will be happening. It will happen after the election. The next president will use ISIS as an excuse, these terror attacks as an excuse for us to put boots on the ground. Believe you me, that will happen. I have no doubt in that. So next week I want to talk about reasonable people versus unreasonable people. I want to focus on the non-aggression principle, and I feel like I kind of defined conservatarianism already this week. I kind of talked about it. NAP, military, immigration, taxes. That's kind of kind of where I stand. And look, I know not everybody's going to agree with me, and that's fine. And I encourage the debate. But what I will say, in my last thought of the day here, folks, I really do encourage you to survive. You need to make it through. You need to teach anybody and everybody that you can who's willing to listen. Again, you can only take the horse to water. You can't make him drink. But anyone who's willing and interested to learn about liberty and what free markets, philosophy of freedom, anybody who's willing to hear it, you need to survive so that when the day comes, we can rebuild and we can perfect this imperfect government, or at least make it more perfect. Maybe we'll never be able to get to the utopian voluntary society that anarchists and voluntarists want. I hope we can. I would love to see that. But we have, after the collapse, somebody's going to need to be there to put the pieces together, and I hope that we make it, and that's your job. Each of us has a job to do, and you can only do so much in your sphere of influence. My job is to ring the alarm bells and hunker down. That's what I'm doing. That's what I hope you're doing, and just try to spread the message of liberty any way you can. Anyway, folks, I certainly do appreciate you tuning in week after week. Mac Pack here, the tip of the spear. I want to give a shout out to James Baker of Open Carry Detroit for joining us on the show, Dan Sandini of thedaylightdisinfectant.com, and Sam Whitfield. Check them out, the Whitfield Analysis. Anyway, don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Check the shop link out on there. We got lots of original designed T-shirts, hoodie, coffee mugs, phone cases with liberty-oriented stuff on it, like the Bear Arms design, the Be Libertarian design, the I Heart Open Carry design. Check us out on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow and follow us over there. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow, and subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.